Hey, all you cool cats and gamers! Welcome to No Category Left Behind, the GDQ Hotfix show that showcases category extension speedruns. I'm your host, Nuclear, and tonight we've got some Hollow Knight for you, featuring Mathulu with 5 Pantheon boss orders. Super excited for this one. It's going to be big gaming tonight. But before we get into the run, we do have a few announcements. GDQ 2023 Online is coming up this weekend, January 8th to the 15th. Go to gamesdonequick.com for more information. Also, if you want to follow what Games Done Quick is up to, use command links in Twitch chat for all things GDQ. And as a reminder, your subs, Prime Gaming subs, gift subs, and bits cheered on the GDQ Twitch channel help support Games Done Quick with GDQ 2023 costs, including hotel cancellation costs. Please consider subscribing to help support Games Done Quick. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass things over to Mathulu to get us started on the run. Take it away.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Nukes. I appreciate the intro, and welcome on in, everybody, to No Category Left Behind. We are going to be running one of Hollow Knight's most absurd categories in my mind, and one of my favorites tonight, Pantheon 5 Boss Order. It's a run that does every boss in the game in the order they appear in Pantheon 5, and we'll be telling you a lot more about that. I'm here with my co-commentator, Quacksilver, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, friends. I am Quacksilver, the terrible mind behind this category, and I'm so excited to see P5 Boss Order getting showcased like this and absolutely destroyed by math. It's going to be a good time.
Yes, indeed. All right, so I'm just about ready to start the run, so I will do a countdown to starting here. We're going to get going in about 3, 2, 1, go. Alrighty. So those of you who are familiar with Hollow Knight, obviously quite a popular indie game. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend that you do. You jump into it and you experience it in its full glory. That means as few spoilers as possible. But if you are familiar with it, you may know that there are quite a lot of different bosses, and there is a particular boss rush mode at the end of the game known as Pantheon 5, where you fight every boss in a row. That provides us with a bit of an order to do the game in, the closest thing we could get. We tried to do alphabetical boss order, but unfortunately it doesn't quite work. So instead, here we are taking what I like to call dev-intended order through the game, and you'll see as we go that it is probably anything but. This is a category that will involve a lot of ridiculous routing, a lot of backtracking to places we've already been, a lot of having to do skips to access bosses out of order. It's actually kind of amazing. It's definitely one of my favorite categories in this game, and it is a pleasure to be able to showcase it here today.
Yes, that it is even possible at all to beat all of the bosses in the game in this order is kind of miraculous. We're going to be stretching some definitions for things here. So if you're familiar with Pantheon 5, as Mathulu already alluded to, full game spoilers ahead. Welcome to speedrunning. In Godhome, there are several souped-up versions, more powerful versions of bosses than you fight in the overworld. The whole conceit of this speedrun is that we're not going to be visiting the DLC area, so we ignore the souped-up versions of bosses, which means this speedrun will end with Math getting the regular true ending and finishing with Hollow Knight and Radiance instead of Absolute Radiance, because otherwise we would simply have to do all of Godhome after it. We also only care about defeating the bosses entirely, which is going to come up very quickly here, and we also only care about the first instance of a boss in the order. So there are some mini-bosses that appear multiple times in the game, and we only care about the first one that Math kills is in the appropriate place in the order. After that, it's open season.
Yes, so in particular, that means we can't kill any mini-bosses before they would appear in the order either, even if they're not sort of the most prominent member. That matters in basically one instance, but it gives us a little bit of flexibility as well with some of the routing later on.
Yeah, so let's dive into the order, which right away presents a comedy. The first boss in Pantheon 5 is the Vengefly King, which presents a bit of a challenge because the first boss most runners are expected to encounter in Hollow Knight is False Knight. who Math is rapidly approaching up here, just detouring to get a little bit of geo, which is this game's currency, in order to open up a stag station, which is the sort of fast travel waypoint system that we will be making very heavy use of in this run. Fortunately, in the False Knight fight, the devs have actually given us a bit of a saving grace here. There is a dev-intended early exit to the fight that allows us to fight False Knight, but not kill him, thereby allowing us a way to get out of this first area of the game without violating the Pantheon 5 boss order right away.
Yeah, that's probably the most egregious case of a boss, like, wildly out of order. We literally have to go halfway to killing False Knight and then leave, and I think that's beautiful, personally. We will be coming back later when False Knight actually appears in the order, but as Quack mentioned, the first boss is actually Vengefly King. I know you guys can't see the boss order in front of you, but you can look it up on the Hollow Knight wiki if you're interested, or I will be telling you which boss is next as we go through this run. As mentioned, it's going to be not False Knight, despite the fact that we're fighting right now. It's going to be Vengefly King. I do want to say...
Team Cherry just wanted to make sure you knew about the dev-intended early exit.
Exactly. Again, dev-intended, clearly. We want to be able to skip this boss here, just like Team Cherry intended. Clearly, this is what they expected from all the casual players of this game. Yeah, but one thing that's fun about this category is it is one of very, very few categories that actually picks up every single stag station in the game. Almost none do that except for the category devoted to it, all stag stations, and we just get it because we literally need them all. So it's kind of beautiful. I love this category.
Even the 112%, the conventional max, completion percentage speedrun is routed in such a way that you don't actually need to pick up all of them, and they are not themselves percent. But here we picked up the first major ability of the run. This is Vengeful Spirit. You will also probably hear Math and I abbreviate it as VS, or simply call it Fireball. It's a long-range fireball. It does triple your base nail damage. While we will be getting some upgrades to the Knight's Nail, their basic attack, over the course of the run, most of our damage this run is going to come from spells. And when you pick up VS, the game locks you into a little tutorial area to prove that you know how to use it. At the back of this ancestral mound, there is an enemy called the Elder Balder, which can only be killed with Vengeful Spirit. The Knight can hold 3 casts of VS, and the Elder Balder takes 4 VSs to kill, so we need to rely on a 50-50 RNG chance here.
Hey, we got
Which,
it.
of course, I don't think, Math, have you ever been punished in a marathon setting by boulders?
I don't think so, actually. I think in marathons, I've had pretty decent luck with this Balder RNG. I've been extraordinarily punished outside of marathon settings, as I don't know if I still do, but I held the record for the worst combined spit RNG. There's another Balder we have to fight in a second. Between the two of them, it took 26 spits to get the 2 Balders to spit out. 50-50 chance every single time. So, I'm glad that we are probably not on course for that here tonight.
Hopefully. If anyone wants to grind for the world's worst world record, how many times in a row can you fail a 50-50? Those are the bounds of this challenge. Math also picked up Charm. They are equipable upgrades in this game, very similar to badges in Paper Mario, if you're old and withered in gaming terms like me. We have a certain number of charm notches. You start out with 3. Math will be picking up a couple more over the run. The charm he picked up, Soul Catcher, just increases the amount of soul the Knight gains when he strikes enemies with his nail very slightly.
Yep, and we don't actually have it for very long, but it's so close to the route that we're taking that it's worth it to grab. We will spend quite a while before we get what is Speedrunner's favorite charm, which is Shaman's Stone. But we'll be seeing that a bit later in the run. This category is no exception to having spell damage as our primary damage, so a lot of what we get is going to be focused around being able to cast more spells and increasing our spell damage where possible.
Yep. And if Ancestral Mound was the dev-intended tutorial for VS, Green Path is the speedrunner tutorial for VS because it teaches you how to do that trick right there. That is a fireball skip. When you cast fireball in midair, it stalls the Knight's air momentum and knocks it back very slightly. So we can use that to skip up otherwise inaccessible ledges. This saves multiple minutes over going around green path in the intended fashion.
Yep, and there's another one here. We'll just go around. There's another one there that saves far less, just a few seconds, actually, if you get it first try. But it is a little bit tighter. I will say these are probably the tricks that people get caught up on the most when you're first learning the run. There are backups to both of them that are much easier and save really just about the same amount of time if you're a beginner. So I would definitely recommend if you're picking up this run, don't focus too much on the fireball skips until you start to bring that time down a little bit, unless you just really like the look of them and want to get some in.
They are pretty.
Yeah, we will have one that's actually effectively required for this run soon. That's a bit of a spoiler, but we'll be seeing it soon enough.
Which is just how you know that fireball skips were dev intended.
Exactly. Once again, this is obviously the dev intended order, so everything I do in this run has to have been
Everything
intended.
Math does is fully canonical. So this is our actual first boss, and oh, there he goes. That's the Vengefly King. Not much of a fight. There's just a quick nail fireball rotation. So next up in the order is Gruzmother, which means we have to go back to Forgotten Crossroads. That is why Math picked up the Crossroads stag right at the beginning of the game, because even though, if you're familiar with the game, you'll know we're right next to Hornet and right next to our ability to dash, we still have like 3 or 4 bosses to go before we can actually pick that up. So we're just going to stop in for the stag and then leave.
Yep, those familiar with P5 may know that the second boss is not, in fact, Hornet, it is Gruzmother, and that is where we are going to go next. So there's going to be a lot of this where we're right next to where we kind of need to be for a boss, and we have to actually basically leave and come back significantly later. And this is why we need so many stags, is because we have to keep backtracking. And if that's not dev intended, I don't know what is. All right, so we're coming back to Crossroads to go and get Gruzmother, and then only after that can we finally go and actually fight False Knight, the boss that we left at the very beginning of the game. So yeah, this is a good time.
Yeah, so Gruzmother, much like Vengefly King, has a very consistent quick kill rotation. Math is going to lead with 3 nail fireball combos into 6 more nail swings, and Gruzmother will pop. Or Gruzmother will be a bit of a bully and then pop.
Yeah. So fun fact about this category as well, we don't actually need anything past Gruzmother, so I'm just getting that GO for safety and then quitting out immediately. We don't actually have to wait for Gruzmother to literally pop and have all of the little Gruzzers spawn. We can just leave. There's quite a lot of this in this category where we're going to kill a boss and immediately quit out. You'll see it from time to time. Mostly it's going to be at bosses where we're sort of at the end of an area or well out of our way from where we want to be. But there's a handful of times that you'll see it for even where we're kind of in the vicinity, like with Gruzmother, because we don't want to sit around for the entire death animation, which is quite slow.
Yeah. And that's unique behavior to this run because the only thing this run cares about is credit for defeating the boss, and a lot of bosses will guard charms or other upgrades that, for instance, if you were running 112%, you would need to collect. But here, we don't. So it's just kill the boss and leave. So this is False Knight. You remember him from before, I imagine. Now we've come back with a fireball, so he is much more manageable, I suppose. We just need to do 3 quick phases of popping his armor and then wailing on his head, and eventually the False Knight will break the floor and allow us to finish him off.
Yep, and this is, this is actually the purpose of this dev-intended shortcut, so you may notice that it's been reinforced here. We can't actually escape again. Very few categories are we able to show that little bit off, but the devs added that shortcut in mostly because they wanted the ability for players to go and pick up this fireball, which, as you can see, actually makes the fight significantly easier if you know how to use it. Of course, that tends to be a big if when you're first playing through the game. Fireball is a little bit unintuitive in how good it is. 3 times your nail damage turns out to be quite useful.
Yeah. So right away, you see the save quit. Something that we didn't talk about is whatever bench you last sat at, or there are a couple of locations in the game that will set an auto hard save. When you save and quit, that is where you will wake up. So Math will have used that several times throughout the run. Notably, benching near a stag gives you functional access to basically any stag in the game that you have unlocked. And so we're heading back to Green Path, because the next boss in our order is Massive Moss Charger.
Yep, still not time for Hornet, sadly. So we're actually going to be taking a little bit of a detour all the way down to the very bottom of Green Path, which is where Massive Moss Charger is located. Now, those of you who have played the game might actually kind of forget something about Massive Moss Charger, which is that the game expects you to have dash when you go and fight him. So you'll see where I've alluded to just a couple minutes ago, fireball skips being clearly dev intended, we are actually going to use one to get to Massive Moss Charger. And it is necessary to do for this run unless you want to do a shade skip, which ends up being quite slow. So hopefully we make it the first try, otherwise I'll have to farm a bit of soul and do the skip again.
Yeah, and it is one of several curiosities that Massive Moss Charger is before Hornet in the Pantheon 5 boss order. That is definitely not the weirdest ordering we're going to see. So Massive Moss Charger is also very, very quick to beat up, so I'm going to take a moment because Chad has been asking about the history lesson behind this category. Oh, we good?
We are not. You can do it with two, but not with one, so I'll go and farm a bit of soul.
Great. So while we do that, this category is a fever dream inspired by the fact that due to, I should say for context, I'm a big fan of alphabetical boss order in runs, and I think especially like forced order runs, like in Super Metroid, for instance. There is a Club Nintendo run where you simply get all of the pickups that one issue of Club Nintendo magazine tells you to get in the order they tell you to get it.
We had that on the show in the past, actually. It's a great category.
Oh, it's so cool. And so, unfortunately, because of the way certain locks in Hollow Knight work, it's impossible to do an alphabetical boss order run. A good example of that is... for instance, what do we have? False Knight and Failed Champion, one of which requires the other to access, are in the wrong order alphabetically, and there's simply no way around that.
Yeah, I think my favorite is Absolute Radiance, is quite literally the first boss in alphabetical boss order. Reverse alphabetical also fails, unfortunately, but yeah, anyway. Continue.
Yes. So we were looking for a terrible like meme order to play through the game in. And specifically, there's a community of meme runners in Hollow Knight that have been responsible for engineering a lot of interesting and offbeat things. And I think this is the longest meme category. Certainly that's on SRC, because obviously there's stuff like low % true ending and stuff that is content, but it is designed to be a very long fever dream, and I love it for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is beautiful, is what it is.
Yeah, and shout outs to Club Nintendo. I'm so glad that's been on that show, and so on this show, so that there's context for that.
It's great, and there's a Nintendo Power % too, which is not the same as many people think that they're the same thing. They're actually different, very different runs.
Interesting. So what's the
also did have
Nintendo Power %?
I'd have to look exactly. I just know that like the Nintendo Power route is quite different. I don't know them off the top of my head to like say exactly right now, but I know that they lead you a bit different ways. I know that watching the Club Nintendo one, it took you some weird directions for sure.
Gotcha.
I am a casual Super Metroid enjoyer. Shoutouts to Super Metroid speedrunners. So now we finally get our dash after all of this walking around Green Path. Matt got the Queen Station stag, which is probably one of the most neglected stag stations in the game in sort of general categories, so that he could go back up to Green Path stag so that we could fight Hornet and get our dash. And now, the next boss is Gorb. Here is the problem with Gorb being the next boss. There are two major movements and like traversal upgrades that the knight needs to even access Gorb that we don't have yet. So
Yes.
it is convention when doing your first run of Pantheon 5 boss order that your splits that you run against are just the bosses in order and you don't use a route. So everyone who has run Pantheon 5 boss order, I think this is true, has first done a fully blind run, and let me tell you, nothing is as funny as watching seasoned speedrunners try and figure this out as if it is their casual playthrough again. I have been guilty of this, Math has been guilty of this, it's a ton of fun.
Yes.
But an average Gorb split in a routed speedrun where you know where you are going is, Math, your split time is what, like 15 minutes?
1952.
19 minutes. We got some stuff between Hornet and Gorb.
Yep, and to be clear, not all of that stuff is strictly speaking necessary to fight Gorb. However, it is actually the best time to do it. So obviously you think, okay, we've killed Hornet, we need to go to Gorb. The things that we need to do that are the next major movement ability, Mantis Claw, which I'm going to get right now. Yeah, that all makes sense. And the Dream Nail, which is a relatively normal thing to be getting and not that hard to get. So of course where I'm going to go after I pick up Mantis Claw is to go save Bretta and then head into Deep Nest to save Zote. And of course, you know, that takes a little bit of time. So we'll go on a bit of a detour here and enjoy the sights as we work our way back to Gorb.
Yeah,
I do have a good question from chat asking what makes something quote unquote dev intended.
So to be emphatically clear, as Math does a great example of speed tech that has actively been patched out in various iterations by the devs, the Hollow Knight devs are intensely creative, wonderful people, largely unconcerned with the speedrun of this game. So when we say things are dev intended, we're mostly joking around. Yeah. And it is through sheer luck that this patchwork route is able to happen. That trick that Mathuli did up there was an explosion pogo, which actually they took the ability to literally pogo the explosions out in this patch of the game that Pantheon 5 boss order is run on, but there's a backup where you pogo the explosive.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so we call that particular variant Comfy Pogo, and it is what you have to do on the latest patch of the game. One thing that I haven't really mentioned, if you're at all familiar with Hollow Knight speedrunning, is that I'm actually running on the latest patch right now. This category is locked to patches after 1.4. Well, I guess suppose technically 1.3, but Hive Knight didn't exist in the most common speedrun patch for this game, which is patch 1221. Since Hive Knight is one of the bosses we have to fight, you actually have to run this on latest patch. So yeah, we have to do some of the latest patch only tech as part of this run, and it's a good time.
Yeah, and also, yes, as Matt alluded to earlier, we're detouring here for a little bit of a story progression. One of the last bosses in the order is our dear pal Grey Prince Zote. And I'm here on this show now to spread the apparently hot take, alongside Math, who I think will back me up on this, that Grey Prince Zote is one of the best bosses in this or any other video game.
Absolutely.
And so it is with deep honor and reverence that we have to jump through all of these hoops in order to make the Grey Prince Zote fight even accessible. You need to save Bretta, save Zote a couple of times. You need to beat up Zote later. The reason Math is saving Zote here, we're going to go into Deep Nest in a second, is we want Zote in Colosseum as early as possible, so that way when the route order takes us to the Colosseum, Zote will already be there.
Yes, exactly. So because we need to do, you'll see pretty quickly, we need to do Colosseum very early, relatively speaking, and Zote extremely late. So it's very easy to forget that you need to have Zote saved before you can face Zote in the Colosseum. And we luckily are not going to be making that mistake like many would on a blind run of this particular category.
One of the most common, I think the two most common surprise errors in blind Pantheon 5 boss order runs are realizing you haven't saved Bretta or Zote and realizing you're at Gorb without the Dream Nail.
Yes, both are absolutely fantastic to witness, and boy, it's fun.
So I'm seeing it in chat, the Pantheon. So if you are doing Godhome ending, which is the speedrun that actually does go into Godhome and finish the game that way, it is possible to simply leave Grey Prince Zote out of Godhome. If you, for instance, leave Zote to die right away, which is a thing the game lets you do if you're a bad person, then Grey Prince Zote simply won't show up in the Pantheons. However, for Pantheon 5 boss order, the rules of the category explicitly require that you must fight all of the bosses that you can in the overworld in Pantheon 5 order. So we are getting GPC, and because it's bosses you can find in the overworld, there are also some bosses that are exclusive to Godhome, like Absolute Radiance, but also like the Nail Masters. There was some talk early in the category about whether or not you needed to visit the Nail Masters at the appropriate points, but since they're not bosses, it felt kind of unnecessary to do like, oh, we forced like maybe a couple seconds of extra movement. We decided it wasn't ultimately fun enough to include, so Nail Masters are not required here. It's just sort of category fiat. And Math also there picked up his second spell, the Howling Wraiths ability, which is our up spell. Wraiths this early is also very uncommon in speedruns. It's kind of one of the last good times Math was in Green Path, so might as well.
Exactly. So early Wraiths is something that is actually turns out to be extremely useful in this run, partly because Abyss Shriek is going to be one of our main sources of damage very, very late in the run. But you'll see just how late I'm talking, literally over 2 hours into this run before I can pick up Abyss Shriek. So here we are 20 minutes in picking up Wraiths. Luckily, we do get a bit of use out of it before then. But, you know, it's kind of one of the more recent additions. Quite a lot of people don't pick up Wraiths when they play this category at all. Some people pick up Wraiths when they go by much, much later in the run, but at that point, you're missing out on all the fun Wraiths action. I miss this damage tank, and I'm kind of sad about it, but it's okay.
That's okay. Still got a good cycle there. And Dash Master.
Yeah, Dash Master makes that easy.
Also, just holding my breath here in case the Garpedes decide to get a little bit frisky with your game's functionality.
Yeah, my game has been crashing here, kind of at like a 33% rate in the past few days, so like I'm glad it didn't there.
We're through. It's easy.
Yeah, let's hope that, remains. Taking a second to open up that particular wall for Nosk, who will be back for very, very late into this run.
Yeah,
but so as you can see, we're heading to Gorb. We're almost there.
This is where Gorb is, right?
Yeah.
Nice jank geometry jump. You love to see it. That's one of the cutest pieces of little movement. So this is Zote. That's Zote over there. Technically, one of our first actions of this game was actually saving Zote because Vengefly King, who you'll recall was the very first boss in the order, had Zote in its jaws, and so that is the first time you save Zote. If you walk underneath that and leave the room and get Claw, I think, without coming back is the trigger. Maybe don't quote me on that, but very quickly after leaving it, Zote will die, and that is permanent for the file. They're actually mutually exclusive achievements for leaving Zote to die and for defeating Grey Prince Zote. But if you save Zote, he then proceeds to immediately get trapped again in this little spider arena that's no fun. And we're playing on Chinese language because it is the fastest. There are fewest characters and fastest text speed. And it's actually quite significant, especially at like shopkeeps. Like we probably save upwards of a minute over the course of this run. Like it's a lot of time. But if you were to play through on English and stop to talk to people, every time you save Zote, he just like basically choose you out for getting in between him and his kill. He's like a deeply, deeply unpleasant character, and that's why we take it upon ourselves to fight his buff version.
Yes, indeed. GPZ is one of the most enjoyable boss fights in this game across many axes, if you ask me, but one of the best is that it is so satisfying to actually fight Zote. In a fight that's not easy at all. Like, you have to beat a much harder version of the boy that you see across the world. But I think Zote has one of the most enjoyable story arcs in Hollow Knight. He's obviously a villain, but he's a fun one, and it's nice to actually be able to bring that storyline to fruition.
Yeah. All right. So now, at very, very close to the bottom of the map, we're going to climb up pretty much all the way to the top of Hallow Nest now. Not quite, but from almost as low as you can to almost as high as you can, we are at last on our way to Gorb.
Yes, and we'll take, again, a little bit of time to get there, but we've picked up this handy little tram pass, which is going to be our route into the City of Tears. So, yeah. And I've got my coffee, which is good because this run is long. This Gorb split should be a little indication of that.
Yeah, Gorb being one of, I think, at least three 10-plus minute splits. If you're just going with your splits are the bosses, it's at least 3, I think. Maybe more. There's some moving around you got to do.
I think it's 3 with my current route. Sometimes it can be more, but GPZ is basically always a 10-minute split or more. Maybe slightly faster if you've done some stuff early. And then Oblobbles is guaranteed longer than 10 minutes, and Gorb is almost guaranteed longer than 10 as well. So, yeah, at least 3. I think those are the only ones, though. It's easy for God Tamer to be a 10-minute split, too, if you have trouble in Hollow 3.
So the reason, well, there's a lot of very complicated factors in this route. This early game route, like before Gorb, is actually, once we get to the point of routing Pantheon 5 boss order, probably one of the most contested areas of the route. In terms of like doing what exactly, like quest setup and that sort of thing in what order.
Oh no.
Math here is going into, did we get it? Oh no.
One more.
So we're trying to race a big guy through the floor here.
Dang it. Okay, gotta go around. Unfortunately, I can't seem to get the sound when you hit the knight through the floor. There's a little sound that normally plays, and I'll just grab this bench for safety real quick. Oh, yeah. That was dumb because now he'll have full health, but it's okay. You can actually kill that lad through the floor if you use 5 casts of wraiths. I hit 4 of them, but I missed the 5th.
Now we have to go into the arena and play it a little bit safe. The big husk does double damage, so you want to be a little bit careful. That's another advantage to sniping him through the floor, because it means you don't have to deal with the big sword. Nice intentional damage tank there. Get out of the double hit. A large point of the macro routing here is it's all building to a very particular bench. Matt is going to sit at a bench in the center of City, and the reason for that is because after Gorb, the next 2 bosses on the order are Dung Defender and Soul Warrior, which are both very, are basically the bench is in between them. That's how I'm trying to say that. So this is a way of getting a lot of quest setup done and setting up for several of the next splits in the route. But it has the knock-on effect of making the split 15 minutes long or 20 minutes long. Yeah.
Now, I think optimally this is something like 16 or 17 minutes, but it is a very, very long split. That cannot be denied.
That's also a very useful shortcut that people may not discover casually, but breaking open that wall next to the elevator there to sort of link halves of Upper City is integral to a large number of speedruns, and that's our bench, City Toll bench.
Yes, so now we cannot take another bench for about the next 5 or 6 minutes, which is kind of fun. But all the benches that were in between Deep Nest and here were optional benches. I could have taken them or left them. I took a couple just for safety, but now I don't have that luxury because the way the route shakes out, we actually need that bench there to quit back out to about 7 or 8 minutes from now. So yeah, it's a good time.
No pressure. No one's ever been bullied by Gorb before.
Absolutely not, no.
So yeah, getting our, gosh, I've already lost count. Is this our 4th stag station?
If you count Dirtmouth, I think it's actually number 5. Because we got Queens, Crossroads, and Green Path. And so with Dirtmouth, this is number 5.
Yeah, so we're on our way. And Matt's going to be stagging out.
Yep, and this is probably one of my favorite parts of the routing in this section. We are now going to go past where Grezmother was earlier and go and finally get Shaman Stone from Celebra, along with a couple of other things. So we're going to buy 1 extra charm, which we won't use at all, but we need it to buy the first charm notch that Celebra offers. That requires 5 total charms. You may have noticed I picked up another couple of charms earlier on, including Spore Shroom. So I'm going to be buying Steady Body here. It is the cheapest charm that Celebra offers, and then Shaman Stone, the one we actually want, along with this charm notch. This charm notch will end up being very useful as we need to have 5 notches later on in this run. And that's what we have now. And
Math is also going to be, let's go, remembering to save Sly, who's a shopkeeper we need basically right away here. When you rescue Sly down below, he reappears at a shop up in Dirtmouth, and we are going to need him to get the Lumafly Lantern at some point because of the order of this run. So if you're familiar with, for instance, the any % speedrun of Hollow Knight, we also use the Lumafly Lantern to access Crystal Peak, 1A area of the game. There are 2 ways into that area, but because of the boss ordering, the Desolate Dive, which is locked behind a boss, actually can't be used because we need to get into Crystal Peak before then.
Exactly. One more, kind of unfortunate fact about this route. Again, we were sitting at the City Storm's toll bench right next to where the Soul Master is, which is where we can pick up Dive. And we can't go get Dive. Instead, we have to leave, go fight Gorb, Dung Defender, Soul Warrior, Brooding Moloch, Zero, and go into Crystal Peaks for Crystal Guardian before we can finally come back. It's a fun time.
Dev intended.
It's a good run, I promise you all.
So this is Dreamnail, finally. Remember 10 minutes ago when we were talking about how this is the split where we need Dreamnail? It's here.
Yeah,
There's a ton of story stuff. There is a ton of story stuff happening, which actually we do need to beat the game, so we are going to need to deal with the major completion points, the Dreamers here, which are why you get the Dreamnail in the first place. The Dreamnail also opens up access to 2 different classes of bosses. One is the Warrior Dreams, which are the floating spirits in the overworld, of which Gorb is the first of many that we will fight. And the second class of boss is Dream Bosses, which are souped up, more powerful versions of a couple of overworld bosses that the Knight fights. Specifically, the Dream Bosses being hard-locked behind beating their base forms is why both alphabetical and reverse alphabetical boss order cannot work in this game, and so we run Pantheon 5 boss order instead.
Yes, indeed. All right. We will be working our way out of Resting Grounds finally. One thing I want to mention, which is pretty fun about this route, is that we actually get the ability to take the upper tram as our access here to Resting Grounds, and I don't know how many other categories do that, if many. I think maybe Low Percent still does, but it's very, very uncommon, and I love that.
Oh, and there's Bretta at the bench.
Yep.
So early early into the run.
I love that.
That's the thing that I hope, one of the reasons I'm so excited to be spending some time here on No Category Left Behind in particular, is just there are truly so many different Hollow Knight runs, and the number has grown eerily in the past couple of years. HK Memes is one of the most populous extension pages on speedrun.com, and I am a huge fan of that.
Yes, absolutely. HK Memes is honestly, it's one of the most extensive and one of the best set of runs, and I highly recommend anyone who's interested in Hollow Knight speedrunning to check it out, whether or not you like to do main categories like 80% or anything like that.
Like, cards on the table, I got into speedrunning because of some Super Mario Odyssey extensions, like Talkatoo and that sort of thing. And so Hollow Knight being as resplendent with memes as it is a thing of beauty.
Those are definitely my favorite ones. Odyssey is actually the inspiration for this show, so it's funny that you say that. That's the one that really got me into category extensions and finding the best meme categories, especially.
Heck yeah, I'm glad. I'm earning all the points here. Let's go. So at long last, we have reached Gorb.
We've finally gotten our chance to ascend, and let me tell you, it's been a journey. The split timer on this boy, it's 18:45 right now for those keeping track. So you know, we are really taking our sweet time to defeat Gorb.
Yeah,
beautiful.
And you also saw Math pick up Cyclone Slash beforehand. Like I mentioned earlier, Vanille Masters are not being included in the boss order, so you can just pick them up whenever. I believe Cyclone is the only nail art you're going to get. Is that correct, Math?
Yes, that is correct.
So yeah, that's the one and only Nail Master we'll see. They do have a presence in Godhome, but they're not bosses in the overworld. So just that quick saying hi. And the reason to get Cyclone Slash is a couple-fold. One of the big ones is, like you can see Math demonstrating right away, you can use it for several quick nail slashes in a row, obviously, which is useful primarily at low nail damage for gathering soul efficiently so that you can cast more spells, because spells are very good. You can also, by activating and then instantly releasing a Cyclone input, you can fast fall, which lets you get some comfy movement in a couple of rooms that are more vertically oriented. Math is also doing a bit of a cutscene skip here. By wiggling a Cyclone Slash as you activate the Grim Lantern, you can leave the room without getting locked in place. Because remember Grimchild, the other major quest boss? We should probably get started on that too, huh?
Yes, indeed. And finally, we are going to be able to save and quit here back to our Sanctum Toll bench. So we are going to be well on our way. But yeah, Cyclone works for a number of things. It helps with damage, it helps with falling quickly, and it also helps get that particular cutscene skip, which almost makes up for it on its own. That's about a 15-second cutscene, I think. If you... Oh, I didn't put on Shaman, did I?
No, you probably should do that before Dung Defender.
I'm gonna just turn around real quick and head back to that bench. No worries here.
Mildly important thing.
Just slightly.
We've said it a bunch. Spells are good in this game. With Shaman Stone, not only is the damage of your spells increased, but also for Vengeful Spirit specifically, the hitbox size increases. And one of the cool things about Vengeful Spirit is that you can double hit with it. Your base nail does 5 damage. A double hit Shaman Stone Vengeful Spirit does 40 damage. So, spell's good.
Yes, and Wraiths, if we hit all 3 with Shaman, it has 3 different hitboxes that... Oh, hi, I need to settle them. It has 3 different hitboxes that are all active once you use Wraiths. If you hit all 3, it's 45 damage, so it's a lot of damage as well, and we'll be using that quite a bit on Dung Defender. But yeah, we'll see how this fight goes. I think in my PB I got him stuck in the floor. We'll try not to do that this time.
Yeah. So there's a Dung Defender likes to hide in the floor. If we had the Desolate Dive ability, which we can't possibly have in a Pantheon 5 boss order run right now, because the boss that gives it to us is after Dung Defender, you could pop Dung Defender out of the ground by diving when he's underground. The shockwave instantly staggers him up out of the floor. But we can't do that. So this is probably my vote for the funniest loadout of any boss in any run in Hollow Knight. We have Howling Wraiths and Cyclone Slash, and that is the Dung Defender loadout.
And it is beautiful.
But what Matt was alluding to is if you stagger Dung Defender as he dives underground, he gets stuck there, and without dive, you just can't hit him until he chooses to do the attack where he pops up out of the ground. Like, he's locked and running around down there, and you can lose a whole bunch of time that way.
Oops. Yes, indeed. Yeah, basically it's a completely random amount of time loss because it just depends on when he decides to actually do that attack again, which can be a while, it turns out. And it's pretty easy to actually get him stuck in the floor because once he starts doing his second phase of this, he chains these attacks. Oh, we got the scream skip. Okay, it's not going to matter.
Nice.
Oh, it did matter. Wow. Okay, usually he goes into his just chained attacks anyway. Okay, we will take that. That is actually really good.
Matt, has that ever happened before?
Scream skip there? No.
No, you got
Absolutely never.
Okay.
Okay, wow, we saved time on that split. That's silly.
Nice. So next up is Soul Warrior. So that is finally the ultimate payoff of this toll bench that Matt has held for almost 10 minutes now, because now we just walk backwards through this shortcut, and we're going to go fight Soul Warrior in Soul Sanctum. Soul Warrior is halfway through Soul Sanctum. It's meant to be a mini-boss on your way to Soul Master, but Soul Master isn't for another couple bosses yet, so we're just going to pop in, kill Soul Warrior, and then leave.
Yep. Once again, one of the more ridiculous pieces of the routing in this category, which is, once again, beautiful, perfect, and dev intended.
And dev intended. Yes. Also, enterprising and Hollow Knight aware chat members will know that Soul Warrior is actually one of those bosses that you fight a lot in this game. I think there are, like 6 possible opportunities for you to fight him. This is the easiest one, and because we're going to Crystal Peak in a little bit in the run, the other candidate for a Soul Warrior that we could fight, the one guarding the Fireball upgrade, just doesn't quite make sense to get, and since we're taking this bench anyway, it's a very convenient Soul Warrior, and having now defeated that one, all of the others are open for business, so to speak.
Yes, and I did actually have to wait for the door to open before quitting out there. I found out literally in my run yesterday that if you quit out too quickly, the Soul Warrior actually doesn't... Oh, I could have gone to the right here. It's fine. The Soul Warrior actually respawns, doesn't stay dead, and you have to fight him again the next time you come through there. So luckily, we've learned from that particular mistake.
It's worth noting, you do still get credit for the kill, so like it's not like, yes, oh, you failed the challenge of the run. They're just a second one decides to drop by.
Yeah, it's fine. There's no issues there whatsoever with the validity of my last run.
Whatsoever.
Definitely
yeah.
not.
No, legitimately, like we checked the code. You do get credit for the Soul Warrior kill. It's legally a different Soul Warrior if you get that glitch. There we finally visited Sly. We picked up the Lumafly Lantern. We're also going to visit the Grim Tent, which has now spawned in since Matt's Howling Cliffs adventure, and we're going to pick up Baby Grimchild. If you recall the Grim Quest from a casual Hollow Knight playthrough, that is sort of running all around the map, progressively upgrading Grimchild. The goal is to do that in a way that mostly overlaps with areas Matt is going to be in anyway, but there are some that are very hard to fit in, especially because it is sequenced into 3 tiers. So some will just be making command runs for sort of late into the run, but mostly we're going to try and route Grim Quest in where we can. In a run like 112%, Grim Quest routing actually defines a lot of the run, a lot of the mid-game of the run, because you want to go to places where you can be doing a current Grim Quest, but we don't have a choice in the matter in Pantheon 5 boss order.
Yeah, in P5BO, what we do is basically... What I used to do is literally just do the Grim Quest all at once toward the end, but here we basically are finally routing them in a little bit and getting it kind of along the way. There's a couple of places where we will have to go out of the way, but actually all but one are pretty much when we're in the area anyway. So it's a lot better now. Part of that is actually picking up that notch that I picked up, the 5th notch from Salubric. Any astute members of chat remember that. All right, so Moloch is a fun boss to have rates for. All right, being a bit rude right now, but that's okay. I do have to remember that Wraiths isn't as tall as Abyss Shriek, which is also a fun spell to have for Brooding Moloch, but yes. And once again, we can just quit out. Yeah.
Yep, Moloch conventionally bursts into a Mask Shard. Shoutouts to 4 Mask Shards. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the fastest, or one of the fastest, I think outright the fastest, NMG category extension in Hollow Knight, which also does Brooding Moloch, but with no upgrades. And with that, at about a little bit over 45 minutes into the run RTA, Math has finally finished all of the bosses from Pantheon 1.
Oh, friends, we'll be here a while, as you can tell.
It does get a little faster from as we get more movement abilities. Shocking. We don't have to walk all the way around Green Path twice anymore, but that is the end of Pantheon 1. In Godhome, this is where you would fight the Nail Brothers, Oro and Mato, but since we're skipping that, since they're not in the overworld, we're just moving on to Pantheon 2, and this is Zero, our second Dream Warrior. Zero is a great showcase of double hitting and occasionally triple hitting fireballs, but also, since Math has Wraiths, when Zero phase shifts, he doesn't get knocked back anymore, so it's easy to just sit underneath him and scream.
Yep, that is another fight where Wraiths is helpful. Sometimes Zero can be a little bit rude when you're trying to get double hits and not really behave. It's easier when you have Shade Soul, but with Vengeful Spirit it can be hit or miss, but there it was pretty reasonable. All right, so next up on the list is actually the Crystal Guardian. So we're finally going to get a chance to head into Crystal Peak, where we can pick up Crystal Heart finally, and that will be a bit of a blessing. But
yeah, and this is why, for the record, we need Lantern in this route, because Crystal Guardian, who is in the middle of Crystal Peak, perhaps unsurprisingly, is right now, and Soul Master is immediately after him. So,
yes.
So, again, let the record reflect, 100% canonical, dev intended, Lantern access for peaks.
Lantern access for peaks, and
it's what Team
Soul
Cherry
Warrior
wants.
About an hour before Soul Master is definitely what they wanted. All right, so here is a trick that I will not be doing called Pogax. I'm sorry to any Pogax enjoyers, but it is the worst. Oh, right, I have...
Did you see it? Did you see the trick he's not doing?
What's Pogax? Now I need to know.
It's a trick.
A miner to throw an axe at you, and you pogo the axe. It is. It's painful.
Like a couple seconds of time save if you get it, and like deeply embarrassing because all of a sudden you're an impromptu accomplice to the world's worst juggling show for like a while if you miss it.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Crystal Guardian.
Yes, we're finally at Crystal Guardian. It's a fun time. Once again, Wraith's pretty useful on this lad. It's a fight that's not too bad once you have a couple spells. This is actually kind of fun. You can dream nail Crystal Guardian before he wakes up and have a little bit better of a time with things, but it's a little bit... I swear it's impossible to not take damage to this. It's a little bit tricky at times to do it because... he will wake up as soon as he uses a single spell, and it can be a bit slow to get all those dream nails off, so instead I just woke him up immediately and fought him.
Yeah, and there Math picked up a key. That is the Shopkeeper's key. We're going to use that key to be able to access another key in order to be able to access an actual upgrade. We're going to take that key back to Sly. Yeah, Math, Dive is next.
We're getting there. We're getting there. The joys of this category.
But the Shopkeeper's key is going to be exchanged along with some Geo for the Elegant key, which will open up the path to the Vengeful Spirit upgrade, Shade Soul, but that's in a little bit. First, we're getting Crystal Heart, the Super Dash. Nice underplat. That trick is called underplat. It is basically no time save and a moral obligation in Hollow Knight speedruns.
It saves about 75 years, and if you don't do it, you actually cannot PB, it turns out.
Guaranteed run blessing.
Yes.
Crystal Heart is the Super Dash. It is infinite horizontal distance from a ground or wall cling start. And generally just speeds up a lot of things. If you are traversing a distance that is at least 4 dashes long, it is faster to use Crystal Heart. And there are several distances that are much longer in this run that are some very nice C dashes, including gaps that start on ground so you can get a C dash, but then are just open air, like this way out of Crystal Peak. Math also changed charms for Grimchild. The way the Grim quest works, if you're unfamiliar, is there are Grimkin that spawn at specific locations all the way around the map. They are only visible and fightable if you have Grimchild equipped, and they come in 3 tiers. You have to clear out a tier before you can access the next tier, and this one is being very rude to Math now.
Dang it. Okay,
oh, wow, that hazard respawn.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. Oh, no, you're not dead. All right, I think 2 more hits. These are pretty obnoxious to fight. Sometimes you can get them with the C dash, and that's actually probably the most fun way to kill them. I was hoping to pull that off, but I ran into a bit of bad luck with the Grimchild there, but that's okay. Anyway, so that's actually how we're getting out of Crystal Peak, and I'm going to head down here back to Sly's shop and finally use that shop key we picked up earlier to trade it for the elegant key, as Quack was saying earlier. So now we can finally go and get Shade Soul.
Yeah, and Shade Soul, the Soul Warrior, you fight a second Soul Warrior, who the community has nicknamed Norman. You fight a second Soul Warrior. Because we've already beaten Soul Warrior in the order, it's fine to do that. And because this Soul Warrior is positioned so close to Soul Sanctum, we pick up Shade Soul on the way to picking up Dive, since Soul Master is our next boss. There's also one more Grimkin to fight off here.
When it's in the wall, it's the worst because we don't actually... Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Base Vengeful Spirit can't go through walls. It dissipates against walls. And Shade Soul, once you upgrade it, it actually does go through walls, so killing Grimkin becomes much less persnickety as soon as we upgrade the Fireball right now, but unfortunately that doesn't help here.
Yep, we are finally on our way to go and pick up the Shade Soul. So this is... that is basically the last Grimkin that we need to worry about. But unfortunately, because Sanctum is a hard save, there's no time when we're really going to be up by store rooms conveniently soon. So we get this one here. Although now that I think about it, I do actually quit out to store rooms about 700 times in this run. So maybe I should just get it later. But anyway, we won't worry about that for now.
Yeah, this Soul Warrior has about twice the HP of the one that we fought for the ordering. It also spawns these little flying enemies that can make the fight considerably more difficult, especially if you don't have many upgrades. But we are rewarded with Shade Soul. With Shaman Stone equipped, Shade Soul is massive and does 40 damage per hit. There are several bosses that it's possible to triple hit. Even your fully upgraded Nail does less than a fifth of the 120 damage that it is possible to get with one Shade Soul.
Yeah, Shade Soul is very, very good, and we will be using it for our main damage for the foreseeable future. I am going to stop to heal. Unfortunately, I could only get one, but that's okay.
You got Wraiths. Wraiths will carry in the Soul Master fight.
I got Shade Soul. It's fine. We can kill these lads. There we go.
Would you two mind explaining for viewers who might now just be joining us what this category is?
Sure. Absolutely. This is Pantheon 5 boss order. It is defeat all of the bosses in the overworld in the order that they appear in Pantheon 5. So this run does not go to Godhome, and we don't care about our completion percentage. We just care about killing every boss that exists in the overworld in the silliest order we could possibly get to all of them.
Come on. Yeah, I knew you were there. Okay. Whew. Nothing like a good old soul sanctum to wake you up, friends.
Yeah, that's some ugliness for sure. The charm that Math picked up there at the back end of that abysmally full hallway was Spell Twister, which is probably the other half of our most important damage rotation. Spell Twister decreases the cost of spells. So once you are speedrunning Hollow Knight, the significator, that's a word, of that is taking off the quick focus and putting on the Spell Twister, because the soul usage has shifted from healing to simply pumping out the damage.
Yeah, and there you can see the usefulness of Howling Wraiths and also Shade Soul, how quickly Soul Master dies here. For anybody that remembers this fight from their casual playthrough, it's usually not this quick. When you have spells and you know when to use them, this fight gets a lot better, a lot faster.
Yeah, Soul Master is very fragile, just disguises it well, because usually you're just like swinging a base sword and base fireball at him. Yeah, he has 2 phases, again, full game spoilers. Once he starts spamming the dives repeatedly, that's just easy to pick off with Wraiths, and then if that doesn't work out, plenty of Shade Souls once he spawns in a static location. And we are rewarded with Desolate Dive,
yes,
and
finally.
also the funniest split to ever exist in all of speedrunning. Because you see, dear viewers, the next boss in the fully canonical dev-intended Pantheon 5 boss order is Oblobbles.
Yes, and if you don't know what that means, Oblobbles are a boss at the end of Colosseum 2. That is a rather late game sort of challenge arena up at the very top of the map, and we are going to have to work our way over there in what will end up being a rather painful display. It's very early on, so having to do Colo 2 with very few upgrades, relatively speaking, will be, as you could expect, not exactly a walk in the park. But we also have the lovely experience of needing to get into Kingdom's Edge and back. So normally when I do this run for PB attempts, I have to do an acid skip going into Kingdom's Edge. Here, I'm going to take a marathon safety and go pick up Isma's Tear, which doesn't actually lose that much time. But in the normal run, it's already painful getting up to Colo, and then you have to do Colo, which is, tough.
Yeah, and so in defense of Team Cherry and their master plan here, in a boss rush mode, which the Pantheons themselves actually are, it makes a lot of sense, because Oblobbles themselves they're not by any means a walk in the park, but they are about, I think it is fair to say, a Pantheon 2 level boss. This happens in the first half of Pantheon 2 in Godhome. But when you consider the fact that you have to do, 5 minutes of Colosseum before them, and in this case, we also have to do all of Colosseum 1 first, because you have to do the Colosseums in order, it quickly becomes much more painful. The reason, by the way, that Colo 1 is not in and of itself a boss is because the end boss of Colo 1 is just a pair of Gruzmothers, and Gruzmother we already took care of in our intended route, because Gruzmother is like the second boss, so once again, it's simply fair to get it through Colo. But that is also why Cthulhu went out of his way to save Zote early, because we need to defeat Zote at the end of Colo 1 in order to put him in Dirtmouth, so that the Grey Prince Zote fight is accessible much, much later. And if you go through Colo 1 and 2 to do Oblobbles here, and Zote isn't there, you have to go and fight Colo 1 again later to put Zote in Dirtmouth. So yes. It's like a casual 3 free minutes of time save in the route.
Yes, and I am taking a bit of time to go and do the Grim Quest here. This is mostly because we're going to need to fight Troopmaster Grim relatively soon, and one of the Grimkin is actually in Kingdom's Edge, so I'm going to work the Grim Quest. I can't speak, friends. The Gwym Quest. Up to that point before we go into Kingdom's Edge. Here's where I'm going to take the detour to go and pick up Isma's Tear. Let's see if I still remember where that is. Been a while. Sorry, Spooky. I saw the message.
Look, marathon safety is important. We don't want this being any sillier than it already is. And fortunately, because the optimal way to get Ismus tier does in and of itself require acid skips anyway, we can still talk about acid skips. So if the knight does not have Ismus tier, which is the acid swim ability, the distance you can exist above a pool of acid is actually much smaller, because when you have Ismus tier, you drop into acid like it's water, and it sort of kind of sucks the knight in a little bit. But it lets you do things like Crystal Dash very low above a pool of acid to sneak through some spaces that you might not otherwise be able to get. So we use that notably to pick up Ismus tier in not just this safety, but also a lot of speedruns, like, for instance, all skills as a main board category. But now, having gotten Ismas, there will be no more acid skips, which is a good thing, because optimally in this run, there are all 3 of the hardest acid skips in the game.
Yes, this run has just every acid skip, basically. It's kind of amazing. Anybody who's familiar with Hollow Knight any percent may have heard of Queen's Garden acid skip, or QGA. That one is in this run if you skip Ismus tier. There's also the Kingdom's Edge acid skip, which has to be done 2 different ways. I mean, you could do it the same way twice, but the hard way twice, or you could do it once the hard way and once the easy way. That is also one of the hardest acid skips in the game. And then it also features a third one, which is the Love Key skip, which is a way to get Love Key, which is needed to fight the Collector. That is not the hardest acid skip, but it is probably close to number 3 on the list. The Ismus acid skips are not too bad, I think.
Yeah. And we'll call out these acid skips that Math has declined for marathon's sake as they come up. The first one, the Kingdom's Edge acid skip, or the ACN skip, after the category it was originally labbed out for. Another excellent choice Hollow Knight meme category, all charm notches. That is actually how Math and I became entangled in Hollow Knight.
Yes, indeed. And actually, we featured that on this channel as well on a previous
that is true.
GDQ
Matt
Hotfix.
ran this for One and Done-a-thon, ran all charm notches. So plug.
Yes.
But
check out that recording then. Oh no. I missed the C- quack. I'm screwed.
Well, it's fine. So this is that moment. Math is going to quickly kill the Grimkin that is out in Kingdom's Edge. This is actually very similar looking to all charm notches in terms of conceit. Kill the Grimkin and then do the acid skip, and then go to Kalas. But so this Grimkin is tier 2, which is why Math upgraded Grimchild beforehand, because if Math did not do the Grimchild upgrade, it wouldn't spawn. And then we climb up these platforms, and this is the pool of acid that we are declining to skip today, the first of several.
So to skip this one, we would have to go and C-dash off a little spot on the wall just under the alcove on the left. You don't have very many frames where you can actually get the acid skip off and still have somewhere to go on the other side. So it is, in my opinion, the hardest acid skip in the game. At least one that's used in a category. I don't know. I guess, there's arbitrarily cursed versions of unskip or whatever, but outside of those.
But yeah, the great persistence of spirit of the Hollow Knight community is if you find a skip that is significantly cursed enough, someone will wrap that skip in a category before too long. Shoutouts to Gaslight Gatekeep Girl Boss, one of my favorite category names ever.
Yes. Has that got a board yet? That deserves
it. Does
a board.
not. It does not have an official board. There is a spreadsheet, because there's always a spreadsheet. But Gaslight Gatekeep Girl Boss, while Math does some movement here, is the category where you, in order, Gaslight, like the Grim Lantern, Gatekeep, enter City of Tears through the gate that drops behind you, and Girl Boss, talk to Eternal Emilicia. It features some incredibly cursed skips and started as one might expect, a complete and total bit, and then people were like, wait, actually, there's some amazing movement that goes into this speedrun. And now it has like a dozen runners or something, or a dozen people who have run it.
I'm obsessed that that's a category. That's so good.
It is incredible. Hollow Knight meme categories are fantastic.
Truly, that's the thing about Hollow Knight. There is just so much content in this game. There's so much lore in this game. There's so many little side quests and achievements and just fun things to do. We'll talk about Kronk % later. Don't get me started. There's like actual commentary that we should be doing. But put a pin in that. We'll come back in the Coliseum. But there's so much to do in Hollow Knight, and so that makes it a phenomenal casual game, and it also makes it a truly phenomenal speed game. Yeah, Matt, because you're going to Mantis Lord, so I have to talk about Kronk %.
So true.
But this is Coliseums. You fight the Coliseums in sequential order. They get both harder and longer as time goes on. We're only going through the first 2 right now because Oblobbles is here in the order, and God Tamer, the boss at the end of Coliseum 3, is not for a while. Coliseums the enemies are spawn in consistent waves in consistent positions, so a lot of it is memorization of like what their behavior is and how to manipulate some of their AIs. This Coliseum is particularly spicy in that, especially this Colo 2. Colo 1, there are a fair number of categories that fight it without an upgraded nail. Math is still on base nail here, but Colo 2, there are a small handful of categories that fight it with nail 0, and that changes a lot of the combat dramatically, because when your spells are doing 8 to 16, I don't know, math is hard. When you're doing a lot more damage with your spells than your nail just functionally becomes a soul gathering tool. As opposed to, like, in 112%, all of the Colos are fought with nail 3 and nail arts, so there's a lot more mixed damage rotations going into it.
Yeah, I would say that the Coliseums in this category are probably the hardest Colos that I've done in any category, and I've done a lot of categories and a lot of Coliseums in my time, but this is... if we're talking optimally, this is probably the hardest. We do Nail 0, Colo 1, and 2. Colo 1, not too bad. Colo 2, a lot worse, as Quack was alluding to. And then we also do Colo 3 a bit later, and optimally you do that with only 5 HP. And no Shade Cloak and no wings. It's a pain.
It is easily one of the scariest parts of this run. Probably the outright scariest, because even, like, max completion categories, well, I guess perhaps unsurprisingly, max completion categories by their nature have a lot more stuff when they're doing Coliseums.
Yeah.
So we are coming up here on the end of Colo 1. You saw also there was a Vengefly King at the midway point of Coliseum 1, and there will be 2 Gruzmothers as the boss at the end, which means that, as a fun fact, it is possible, if you really hated yourself, to do Coliseum 1 as the first 2 bosses in Pantheon 5 boss order. You would have to make it to Coliseum you could get Vengeful Spirit by skipping False Knight like we do. Then you would have to pick up Claw without picking up Dash.
No, but you can't, Quack, because GPZ. Zote will die. You have to get here without Claw. You have to get here without Claw, which I think actually is maybe technically possible. But I don't actually know.
If you hate yourself and also want to be at the frontier of glitch and exploit hunting in Hollow Knight, you too can. It's always Zote. It's always Zote. At least we're beating up Zote now.
Yes, we're getting our revenge, and that makes it okay.
So usually in Hollow Knight speedruns, this is where we make a joke about how Zote is like a really, really hard boss. We're actually going to be fighting hard boss Zote later, so I'll just come right out and say it. Zote can't hurt you in Colo. If he pokes you with his little sword, it doesn't do anything. He just bounces off, and it's really funny. And also, it's very fun to beat him up. It's good catharsis at around the not quite the midway point of this run.
Yeah. The Zote kill here is always a good bit of fun, and it's helped by the fact that the reward for Coliseum 1 is actually another Charm Notch, which gives you a full heal going into Colo 2. We don't get that luxury. God, how much health do these guys have? We don't get that luxury from 2 to 3, but in this category, we don't have to do Colo 3 right away.
Which is a huge relief because, oh my gosh, attempting to do Colo 3 with this loadout, no wings, no shade cloak, no like base dive and base rates and VS would be miserable.
Yep. So it's things like this when you're fighting these enemies that you really start to feel the lack of wings.
Yeah, notably the Happy Couple speedrun, which reunites everyone's favorite couple in Hollow Knight, or its objectively faster analog, Purity, which strikes the nailsmith down with the perfect weapon. Those categories also do Colo 2 with base nail. It's a very fun challenge. I'm a big fan of those speedruns. Well, one of the two of those speedruns. And however, that category does have wings, so this is a particularly spicy Colo 2.
Yeah, I would say that Happy Couple Colos, they have their own set of challenges. It's also done with Nail Zero. It's also it doesn't have Wraiths, which we have the luxury of having here, which actually does help quite a bit in some of the later sections here. But no wings definitely makes this, a little bit spicier in terms of the comfort levels while you're trying to actually do the actual fights.
Yeah, and also if you're looking to get into Hollow Knight speedrunning from a casual playthrough, let these Colosseums in particular be the biggest defense of spells over nail in the overworld, because things like Hoppers getting double hit and dying instantly, Primal Aspids dying to a single Shaman Shade Soul, I love that double jump. Doing Colosseum without a heavy lean on spells becomes arbitrarily harder.
Yes.
Cthulhu is also a very avid randomizer player. The rando for Hollow Knight is very well developed and a ton of fun. You have not known suffering until you have seen claw and nail only Colo 2. There was some ridiculous spice that I've seen you run before.
Yeah, one time with random start, it spawned me at Colo 2. Colo 2 had dash, so I said, yeah, we'll do it. With literally just Spore Shroom was my only, no claw, no dash, no wings, obviously, just Spore Shroom.
Shoutouts to the randomizer.
Yeah, that was probably the worst it's ever been.
Yeah, we're going to get our first taste here in just a second of the floorless section of Colosseums. It's sort of tested out in Colo 2 and then paid off in a truly brutal gauntlet in Colo 3 much later. But you can't actually see it right now because we're very high up, but the floor is spikes. So you have to use the walls and pogos in order to deal with these enemies. This floorless section is fortunately very short. And with Spell Twister in particular, Shade Soul, you have enough soul to just sort of use Shade Soul to mop up most everything.
Oh, I didn't have soul.
Yeah, one of the unfortunate things of Soul Twister is the UI for your soul is very much based around not having Soul Twister. Yes. So you just sort of have to eyeball if you have one cast of soul with Twister equipped. You just sort of have to eyeball it, and guessing it wrong can be a bit unfortunate. So these are battle ovals. They fly randomly, shoot 4 bullets, and they're miserable. They do die to a double hit of Shade Soul, but wow, are they tanky and not always guaranteed to be double hits, and they fill the screen with their little projectiles.
I haven't gotten any double hits on these. If you don't get a double hit, they are a single and 6 nail swings, or they are 14 nail swings if you just hit them with your nail. So you can see why spells are good. All right,
5 damage nail
is the
does not hold up.
No.
Yeah, and so this is... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I feel like if I've learned anything watching these speedruns is that spells are way more overpowered than I think a lot of casual players realize, because I definitely was fighting with mostly nail during my casual playthroughs.
Yeah. Part of it is that nail upgrades come with a bit of a cost. if you do them in speedruns because they can actually increase the health that bosses have. So sometimes we'll put off nail upgrades intentionally in speedruns, and then it's even better. But yeah, even with max nail, spells are still
that's
very
called
good.
foreshadowing.
Yes. Absolutely. All right, I quit out here. Okay, so that was Call of 2. We definitely didn't almost die. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and how long was that oblobble split, Matt?
That was a solid 17 minutes and 25 seconds. So, you know, could have been worse.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty normal Soulmaster to oblobble split. So that's the longest single, like, inter-boss split of the run. There is one more hefty split towards the very end, but it's not because the boss takes a long time to get to, it's because we're doing all of the end game prep in one split as well, and it's not for a while. So now things become a little bit easier. The next boss on the list is Mantis Lords. And now that we're sort of in the mid-game here, I want to talk about the next reason why the routing for this run is so complicated and so frightening, and it's because of an ability called Dream Gate. So, in not the first patch of the game, but patched in very quickly into Hollow Knight, the devs wanted to give you another fast travel system beyond the stag stations. So they added an ability called Dream Gate into the game, which lets you essentially set a waypoint anywhere on the map and then teleport to it at the cost of 1 essence. The problem with Dream Gate is that it requires you to have 900 essence in order to acquire it from the Seer. The Seer is NPC who we're going to be revisiting, I think, now, or are we just going to the stag? We're just going to stag.
Not yet, yeah.
Not quite yet. So a lot of full game speedruns, like 112%, it's been my go-to example, are routed around this idea of getting an a la carte teleport as fast as possible, because being able to do that makes your speedrun a lot faster. The problem with that is almost all of the essence in the game is gated by beating bosses. And we are not able to get the 900 essence necessary to pick up Dreamgate until we are into the Pantheon 4 segment of the run. Way later than any category wants to do it. So whereas a normal run at an hour and 15 minutes in would already be routing entirely based around having Dreamgate, Math is going to be walking around the map, admittedly with some nice movement abilities, but walking around the map nonetheless for a lot longer. There are some essence sources that are not tied to bosses. First of all, every enemy has a 1 in a couple hundred chance of dropping essence on death, which is deeply complicated for a number of speedruns, but not super relevant here because it's never worth going for. And also there are whispering roots that are trees you can dream nail to get, if you get every single whispering root, it's almost 500 extra essence, just shy of 500 essence. And this run is so convoluted that there was a period of time where we legitimately looked at doing a run of all whispering roots, another category, inside of this category, just to be able to get Dreamgate earlier. It wound up being slower by a minute and a half, but Mantis Lords?
Yes, I almost went to Elder Who. It's fine. We're fine. We're totally fine. Don't worry about it. Elder Who's not yet, friends. It's Mantis Lords time. Anyway, continue, Quack.
Don't throw the run here, please. There's still so much more to talk about.
Yes.
But yeah, shout outs to all Whispering Roots. Also a great speedrun. If you're looking for basically the opposite of a speedrun, a run that is entirely focused on something that has nothing to do with bosses, and also is much shorter as a consequence of that, check out all Whispering Roots. But this is Mantis Lords. Mantis Lords are one of my favorite bosses in the game. I don't think that's a very unpopular opinion. In Godhome, they have an upgraded form called Sisters of Battle that's even cooler. Probably my second favorite fight in all of Hollow Knight after Grey Princess. But my thing with Mantis Lords is that I keep trying to route them in earlier than they belong in various categories, and keep getting rebuffed by, for instance, Cthulhu. So I'm very grateful that their order is set in this speedrun. But yeah, by this point where you have Shade Soul, Shade Soul and Wraiths, they are much faster to deal with than in my casual. I wound up fighting Mantis Lords immediately after Mantis Claw, as I again imagine is perhaps not uncommon, but it takes a lot longer when you're just poking them to death with your nail.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a slightly better outcome here. Okay, so now we are going to be heading to Marmu, and this is a bit of an interesting segment of the run. I'm going to actually pick up an extra charm notch here as part of the joy of having Isma's tier. So if we don't pick up Isma's, we actually can't take this shortcut, and I take a slightly different route and die immediately.
Yeah, fun fact, that acid pool that Math just swam in is the only unskippable acid pool in the game. It's not because the geometry is tight. The geometry is actually very lenient, but for some reason, only that acid pool has an invisible wall blocking the entrances to it if you don't have Isma's tier. It's not even a very useful skip if we could do it, but that's the only one in the game.
Yep. They added it there because it would be... because it would actually be too easy to skip, I think. You could basically just dash under it if that wall wasn't there. All the other ones require a little bit more finesse, so I think that that's probably why they added it. But yeah, this will actually be a little bit convenient for us later. We will be coming through here to come to Umu, but now we'll be able to come from Queen's Station because this shortcut will be open. I'm going to heal because we're going to have to do Queen's Gardens in a second, and I'd rather not die.
Yeah. This is the other frightening acid skip that we are declining here. This is the infamous QGA, Queen's Gardens acid skip. It is a very tight window on the right edge to Crystal Dash across. If you watch an any percent run of this game, it is probably one of the apex pieces of like speed tech for the run.
Why am I not C-dashing? I don't know. You
Because
tell me.
Dashmaster is fun.
Dashmaster is fun, it's true. That's another thing that this category has going for it, is very early Dashmaster, which is just very good. Hi, today I learned that there are thorns there if you do a cyclone drop. Beautiful.
It hurts a little bit. So the hallmark of Queen's Gardens is these arenas that lock you in with mantises. Fun fact about this, we've talked a little bit about how this run is locked to, and consequently Math is running on the latest patch of the game. In the latest patches of the game, they made QG just harder all around.
Yes.
Mantis Petras have exactly 5 more HP, specifically so that they do not die to a single hit of Shade Soul. Like they moved away from that threshold. A number of skips that you could do in 1.2.2.1 were patched out in Queen's Garden. In the first 1.4, the first God Home patch, this one wasn't intentional, but it was even the case that Mantis traders wouldn't drop Geo, which massively changed speedruns on the current patch of the game, and then changed them again once they realized that mistake, and so on 1.5 they do drop Geo again. But it's just, Queen's Gardens was made a lot harder on purpose.
Yes. Now this room, and honestly most of this route with this kind of equipment, is not unlike what we do in any percent, minus picking up the love key that you may have seen just there. Also going through one more acid pool. That's the last of the major acid skips in this run if we don't pick up Ismas. But somehow, it feels a lot worse in a category that's as long as this one is, to go through all of this section with relatively little equipment. And we have to continue in Queen's Gardens, unlike what any percent does, which is leave. That is not the direction I meant to face.
And this arena is simply termed QG Hard Arena because it is quite long and quite difficult. It is several successive waves of mantises. The mantis traders, the grounded ones, have upwards of 70 health and are very, very hard to double hit. So you're often engaged in combat for a while. That was actually a very, very clean QG Hard Arena.
Yeah, the hardest part of QG, sadly, is not the QG Hard Arena, but it's actually the section that's about to happen here, which we so kindly dub Frogs. Sometimes
Oh,
frogs,
frogs.
sad face, depending on how we're feeling.
Frogs derogatory.
Yes, frogs.
Defrogatory, if you will.
Defrogatory. So true. Yeah, I'm actually, wow. Okay.
Wait, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was too good to be
there
true.
we go. Yeah, it really was. That was very kind, frogs, for the first couple of seconds, and then we both opened our mouths, and then it wasn't anymore.
Yeah, so these jump arcs are completely random. They exist to torture speedrunners. It's just and the fact that the boss at the end of this fun little gauntlet, Marmu, is also a physics-based nightmare, is just really the like knife twisty icing on the cake.
Yep. I'm gonna stop to heal 1 out of safety here.
Yeah, Marmu is not an outright difficult boss, because if you want, you can just sort of play tetherball with Marmu.
Oh, wow.
But killing Marmu fast requires exactly that display of skill that we just saw, and I'm going to shut my mouth. GG, man.
Yeah, that's about the best Marmu I've had in a long, long time. So I will absolutely take that and be on my way. So, yeah. All right, here is one of our last stags. There's still more, don't worry. I don't need this bench.
But you can get this bench, and that's crazy.
That is so true. Nope, I accidentally closed it. Okay, so we're going to Kings now because we are actually heading into Waterways for our lovely friend, the Fluke Farm, and I want this bench. I am going to take off Dashmaster and put on Heart here because it's surprisingly easy to die, not to Fluke Marm, but on the way to Fluke Marm.
Yeah, the bottom area of Royal Waterways, in addition to being quite unpleasant sounding, is very easy to just randomly take like 4 hits to.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's not do that. Would be my my goal for this year.
Yeah, let's start 2023 off strong, shall we?
Yeah, not dying on the way to Fluke Marm.
It has been this many days since Fluke Marm has embarrassed a member of the Hollow Knight community.
All right. But yeah, this section of the run is one of those that's a little bit more. I don't know if I would say relaxed, but it's a little bit of a reprieve after the terror that is all of the Queen's Garden segment. So, you know, we'll take it. All right, so here we go into the Fluke Marm area.
Yeah, whatever the opposite of ASMR is, that.
Yes, prepare yourselves for the lovely, lovely sounds of flukes. And of course, I get through here hitless because I put on Heart. Of course, that is the way that it goes.
That's the rules. So this is Fluke Marm. On earlier patches, it's actually possible to quick kill Fluke Marm by just diving on her head forever. You get locked into the damage dealing animation. But even without that quick kill, Fluke Marm stays still, so you can just press the Shade Soul button a whole bunch. And like with many bosses, we don't need the reward here, so you just quit out as soon as you see the boss explode and get credit for the kill. And we're going to be leaving Waterways through the side exit. Matt was already in this segment of Waterways a little bit earlier for the safety he took when he grabbed Isma's Tear. But, we're going up through Dung Defender anyway. That makes sense. So we'll be revisiting Dung Defender Arena briefly. This all pops us out in the same place in the giant broken elevator shaft underneath City of Tears, which we'll then be using to go down into the Ancient Basin. Because our next boss is Broken Vessel.
Yeah, so this is one of the few times in the run where we're just actually going where the splits tell us to, which is Broken Vessel. We do take a slight detour. I'm opening that later for White Defender. Don't worry, we'll see him again. And actually, the entire reason I came through this section, as opposed to the section down here, is so that I could open that shortcut for White Defender later in the run. So it's a little bit slower than just going through the main route, but because it gets us closer to our lovely boss later on, it actually is faster overall. All right, back down we go. We are going to be taking this tram bench. So once again, the tram that we opened earlier is proving useful. One more reason why we go to Deep Nest so early on in the run. but we are going to be using that in a second because as soon as Broken Vessel is dead, our next boss is actually Galeon.
Yep, so this is... I wasn't paying attention. Did you open the shortcut for Soul Tyrant later?
No, because we're going to go through the floor/ceiling.
Oh, you go through the floor, right. Okay, so this is the first example of that then. That ordinarily, in any speedrun that conventionally cares about fighting Lost Kin, which is the dream version of Broken Vessel, you want to do that in one go because you're literally right there. But we can't because this is Pantheon 5 boss order. So a little bit of a muscle memory break if you run any other category alongside P5 boss order is remembering to open up these shortcuts to come back later to all these areas that you suddenly have to do 2 visits to.
Yes. All right, and coming up here, oh, beautiful, is a trick that we like to call the trans dash, and we got it first try. There's the shortcut we need to open for later, and here we go. Trans
rights TM. It's called a trans dash because you trans your dash. That is the trick. Thank you for understanding.
It's so true. All right, so yeah, we are going to leave Broken Vessel. It's a bit like how we left Soulmaster much earlier in the run and didn't fight Soul Tyrant. We're going to do the same thing with Broken Vessel and Lostkin, which again is one of the more amusing parts of this run. We literally just have to leave and come back much later. And we would absolutely love to kill Broken Vessel right now, or to kill Lostkin right now, because it would give us 400 essence and we could use it to get Dreamgate. Unfortunately, we can't do that. Lostkin does not pop up in our boss order yet, so instead we leave. We do get wings though, so at least there's that. Finally, our wingless time is over, and we can continue on our way.
Yeah, that is more or less the full movement build. We're technically waiting on Shade Cloak, but as far as upgrades to the Knight's movement, this is basically as good as you could hope for. Shade Cloak is a very specific thing, and honestly more of a combat tool in a lot of ways than an overt movement thing. With wings, we are moving as efficiently as we can without Dreamgate. So this area of the route actually weirdly makes a lot of sense. We have this tram bench, and Team Cherry has very kindly placed Galeon and then Hive Knight, who are both bosses right off of a tram stop, as our next 2 bosses on the route. So other than getting a little bit bullied by Garpedes, and I'm once again holding my breath,
yeah, I'll just stop in this hot spring real quick. But yes, because the tram is right next to several of the next bosses in the run, this is a pretty convenient section. There's like a grand total of maybe 2 times in the entire run that happens, so we cherish them while we can. But we really want to keep that tram bench, head up to Galeon, and then we'll come back down for Hive Knight immediately after that.
Yeah. And a beautiful consequence, one of the few good consequences in this run, because you're forced to get Lantern in order to access Crystal Peak because of the way the boss order works out, it also means you have Lantern for Deep Nest. If you don't have Lantern, there are large parts of Deep Nest that are dark. It's not impossible to do Deep Nest in the dark. It just requires essentially memorizing where you're going. And in particular, if you dunk into hazards in a dark room, you respawn at the start of the room. No midpoint hazard checkpoint exists in a dark room. So it is much more infuriating, but we're forced to get Lantern. So that is not an issue. And Matt, please get this essence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I did a run a couple of days ago where I forgot to pick up the essence here from Galeon. I got too much in a mood of quitting out as soon as I killed the boss, and it caused some trouble later in the run. So this time we've remembered, luckily. So yes, now we get to quit back out to this tram bench and head on over to the Hive, one of the best areas in the game. Absolutely everyone would agree. I am
No
sure.
one has ever been bullied by the Hive, not even once. Also, with Galeon down, that is the end of the Pantheon 2 segment. Up to this point, the bosses, so a curiosity about the way Godhome, the actual boss rush works, which again, we're not going to Godhome, but because our order is derived from that, a little bit more fun factory, the bosses in Pantheon 5 are not in the exact same order as the order of the bosses in Pantheons 1 through 4. They changed the order up a little bit to make a jump scare work and also put some of the story bosses closer together. But for Pantheon 1 and 2, it's mostly consistent. So when I say we've beaten the Pantheon 2 segment, that's what I refer to here. We've beaten the bosses that appear in Pantheon 2. In Pantheons, this is normally where you would fight Paintmaster Shio. But again, nail artists do not count for the purposes of this run. So we move right on to Pantheon 3, starting off with Hive Knight. That was some very nice movement up the left wall there in that preceding room, Matt.
Yeah.
I know that is relatively recent to your wheelhouse, so it's nice to see that go well.
That's actually the first time I've ever done it. So I've gone up the left side before, but I wasn't sure if I had to actually land to do it or if I could do it from that platform. And it turns out you can do it from that platform. So today I learned something.
We're all learning together.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Oh, almost blessed.
Too good to be true, but...
Always too good to be true, but we will take it.
Having Crystal Dash for the Hive, man, that sounds nice.
Yeah, that is a bit of a blessing. It's also a curse because a lot of those C dashes are in fact RNG, and bees can be in your way. But what else is new in the Hive?
Bees are
not
fun.
I don't know why we didn't hear the scream there. Maybe because I was healing.
Yeah, so this is Hive Knight. Hive Knight starts by dropping a ton of bees on you from the ceiling and then has a couple of attacks. We love that full cross-screen lunge attack because while he's traveling away from you, he's very easy to hit with double hits. Math also showing off a curious quirk of the Hive Knight fight there, which is that if you're using Wraiths or Abyss Shriek on the Hive Knight and several other entities in the game, the direction you face matters, because if you are facing to the left, you push... wait, now I'm going to talk myself out of it. Which is this direction.
Yeah,
facing left pushes, facing right pulls into you.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's one of the more ridiculous things, and that's the only reason that I used Wraiths while facing right there was to talk about that fun little part. No, it's very easy to forget. But when you're facing left, you're safe to use the full Wraiths, and when you're facing right, you are not. And same thing applies for Abyss Shriek. You would think that I would remember by now, but sometimes...
It's one of those little things.
The brain just gets an idea, gets a slightly different idea, and it's fine.
One of the first, in a randomizer tournament, one of the first matches I ever... one of my first streamed plays of Hollow Knight ever was a randomizer tournament where I died to Gorgeous Husk because I kept using Wraiths facing the wrong direction and kept knocking her into me. And I didn't know what was going on at the time.
Incredible.
Now we move on to Elder who Math very generously dipped a toe into the arena of a little earlier.
Yeah.
And then panicked because we didn't want to invalidate this run.
Yes, so this time we get to actually fight Elder Who instead of running away. And yeah, I'm sure it's all going to be totally fine. So this is one of... I really enjoy this. One of my favorite pieces of routing that I've added to this run, which is to come through the reverse city crest gate. So this is something that a lot of people don't even know about casually. But if you come up here, there's a dive floor that gets you back to the other side. So this is easily forgotten, and I like that this has found its way into this speed run. There's a couple other runs that use that. Yeah, like Zero Geo, I believe, does that, right? Reverse gate? Maybe. Maybe. I know Elegy does, which is the one that I'm thinking of. But yeah, it's fantastic. I love that route. So yeah, we're coming back to Elder Who. And Elder Who is a bit
Thank
mean.
you, Elder Who.
Yeah, thanks for showing off, just exactly what I wanted to say.
That pancake attack, Elder Who is gone, completely invincible, not even on the screen. So if he gives you that many full pancakes in a row, you just smile and say thank you, Elder Who.
Yep. So just a bit unfortunate, but that is how it tends to go with Elder Who. It's okay. Okay.
And next up is Collector.
Yes. So now we have a couple of different things that we're going to do. So Collector is another split that can be a little bit long. We're not going straight to Collector. So I'm actually going to go out of my way to head to Resting Grounds and get some of the rewards from the Seer now that we've collected enough essence. Namely, I'm going to pick up Dream Wielder, which is a pretty useful charm that I'm going to want. Although, I guess I don't want it anymore, because I'm going to have Hard on instead. Oh, well, too late. We're getting Dream Wielder.
We're getting Dream Wielder. So once again, with the bosses we've been able to fight up to this point, map has 650 essence. You need 900 for Dreamgate. We would love nothing more than to be able to pick up Dreamgate now, or like, I don't know, half an hour ago or more. But unfortunately, it remains out of our grasp.
Yes. So instead, we pick up just Dream Wielder here, which is useful for a couple of the bosses that we're going to fight. It's useful for Collector, it's useful for Coliseum 3, and it's also useful for Watcher Knight, which is the boss pretty soon afterward. But instead, I'm probably going to be wearing Heart as a bit of a safety. So
Dream Wielder is a charm. It's a very powerful charm for speedrunners. It's probably one that most casual runners, I would imagine, do not pay a lot of attention to because it is outclassed by Quick Focus in terms of like healing utility. But Dream Wielder makes your Dream Nail much faster and makes it give you twice as much soul. So instead of getting one cast of soul when you strike an enemy with the Dream Nail, you get two, which coupled with the speed increase makes it tremendously powerful.
Yeah, definitely one of the more useful charms in the game, especially for a one-notch cost, but especially useful when you're fighting a few specific bosses where soul is hard to come by, like Collector.
Yeah. So now let's talk about nail scaling. Matt alluded to this a little bit earlier, but this is really, I think, Soulmaster into Oblobbles is the reason you run this category, but the nail scaling at the end of the run is where I think Pantheon 5 boss order really shines. Yep. Certain types of bosses, including Warrior Dreams, so the overworld spirits that you fight, Grimkin, which are not a boss but a static enemy,
and we'll be returning to that one later.
Yeah, and a couple of bosses, a couple of major bosses, their health scales with the number of nail upgrades you have. Certain bosses only scale up to a certain number of nail upgrades, and some, like Warrior Dreams and Grimkin, will scale all the way up to the maximum nail. It is scaled in such a way, it's balanced more or less around your nail damage. The number of nail swings you need to reduce their health to 0 is more or less consistent. The problem is, your spell damage, which we rely on for the entirety of this run, is unaffected by that. So it gives the bosses a lot more effective HP for the speedrun. As a consequence of this, 112% and similar full game speedruns get nail upgrades as close to the end of the run as possible after all of the scaling bosses are defeated. And a big reason they get nail upgrades at all, even ignoring the percent, but a big reason they don't just get them at the very end of the run is because of Coliseums, specifically Colo 3. The problem we have is, after this Collector fight, which Math is doing right now, the next boss is God Tamer, the back of Colo 3. Coliseum 3 with base nail is not only an incredibly frustrating challenge, but it is meaningfully slower than Coliseum 3 with nail upgrades. Like, non-trivially slower, especially given that we don't have a lot of upgrades that 112 has. Like, we don't have Great Slash, we don't have Descending Dark or Abyss Streak. The problem with upgrading the nail here is that it also means that every Warrior Dream, including No Eyes and Markoth, who we still have yet to fight and are two of the worst ones, will have a lot more effective HP. So it is a great trade-off in the run. Some people have just said, okay, fine, I'll do Colo 3 with Nail 0. People have completed runs that way. People have upgraded all the way up to Nail 3 for this run. The route Math is running uses Nail 2, which is sort of the compromise of those things.
Yeah, and I would say that I think overall Nail 2, at least, is what I find to be the fastest, but it is very painful at the end of the run. it's kind of like Quack says, it's a trade-off either way. Call 3 with no nail upgrades becomes extremely painful, but it's also not exactly a walk in the park with nail 2. Nail 3 is pretty easy to get and can help a lot, but then we have to contend with nail 3 Markov, nail 3 No Eyes, nail 3 tier 3 Grimkin, and all of those are just horrendous. So instead, we do this. But yeah, this is one of the most sort of choose your own adventure bits of the routing here. I don't believe that there is exactly a right answer for what to do about nail upgrades as far as Pantheon 5 boss order is concerned. Personally, I vote to do it this way, but many people...
Again, if you have joined us since the beginning of the run and the official rule set for Pantheon 5 boss order, it is custom for runners getting into this category to do their first run blind with just a list of the bosses in order, and good luck, have fun. Both Math and I completed our first runs of the category that way. I think close to all, if not all, of the speedruns on speedrun.com, the runners first did a blind run. It is so much fun. Please experiment. Please share your wild and wacky stories of what you learned was required for the run while running it. It's some of the most fun I've had, both doing it myself and watching other speedrunners go for the blind Pantheon 5 boss order run.
Yeah, blind Pantheon 5 boss order run is one of the more enjoyable things you can do, especially if you've been speedrunning for a bit. So all you Hollow Knight speedrunners that have come to show up for the hotfix run here, think about it. It's really fun. And definitely let us know when you do.
Yeah, for sure. So this is Call 3. Call 3 is, with this build, what, like 7 minutes of pain?
Yeah, something like that. 7 I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah,
so it's painful.
Very long. The enemies come at you very fast in very tight waves. Frogs are back, except they're battle frogs, and they have more health, and they're still just as miserable as they were in QG.
Yep.
This also is it. In addition to several enemies like the battle frogs that are just upgraded, like health-wise versions of prior enemies, there are some fully unique enemies here. We'll see an enemy called the Volt Twister here in a little bit that only appears in Call 3. Obviously, God Tamer is a unique boss. This Coliseum truly throws the book at you. It is so much of a difficult challenge and like an uptick in difficulty that actually the rules for God Home were changed on the second God Home patch of the game, and you no longer, on the most recent patch of the game, need to beat Coliseum 3 in order to get God Tamer into God Home. So a God Home ending speedrun, which again, not what we're up to, we won't be visiting God Home, but the God Home ending speedrun actually doesn't even fight Call 3. We're just doing it because he is a boss, or God Tamer rather, is a boss in Pantheons, so we gotta do it in order.
Nope, that's not the right direction. Yes, and this is one where it's extremely difficult to do certain segments of Call 3 at times, but especially with low equipment. The worst part of Pantheon 5 boss order, the way that I typically run it, is that you only get 5 health here, and that is very hard. I would recommend picking
full
up
damage. Yeah, even with full damage, 5 HP Call 3 is very scary.
Yeah, for sure. Ooh, that's right. Almost forgot about Norman there. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. That was dumb.
Yeah, so these are the Volt Twisters, or our first Volt Twister of a couple. His attack is actually unlike anything we've ever seen before in this run.
True, and
totally not ripped off from a different boss that we just haven't encountered yet.
Absolutely not. They wouldn't do that.
No. Why would you reuse assets to expedite the process of making a quality video game?
Certainly not a good idea. Okay. So honestly, this is a pretty good Call 2 or Call 3 as far as I'm concerned. I will take
It's
this.
because you equipped heart.
Honestly,
no major setbacks
yeah.
once you... So yeah, shoutouts also to the fact that in just a second here, we're going to see another brooding Moloch appear.
Yep. Hollow is the best place to get bosses that we've already fought as part of Pantheon 5 boss order. It would be great if your first brooding Moloch of the run could be this one, but unfortunately brooding Moloch appears before Oblobbles, so we can't do it.
Right, so... And now we get these Garpedes, which are very kind because they're basically soul totems, given the Dream Nail here for soul. If you don't know about this casually, Dream Nail vs Garpedes, because what comes next is Floorless. Yeah, the real Floorless.
You can get a lot of health off these Garpedes. Like, you can heal, you can Dream Nail. If you have Dream Wielder and Quick Focus especially, then this is like a complete oh, right. I forgot that one existed. It's like a complete healing station, basically. All right, great start. We're thriving.
Floorless is kind of brutal.
Floorless do be a bit rude. Where'd you go?
All right, yeah. Again, battle levels, miserable to begin with, extra miserable when you can't be on the floor. I thought I had something better for that.
Jeez. Alright, pretty rude, but it's fine.
Alright, and we got soul here. So the end of Floorless in max percent, like 112% speedrun categories, there's a nail strat for this, but it does not work on this route of Pantheon 5 boss order, so you have to save soul there.
All right, and back up to 5 health here for what is one of the scariest parts of Hollow 3, which is the frog wave at the end of Floorless. So you're usually sitting on pretty low health, but like, you know, it's extra bad because like coming out of Floorless, you're already low on health, you're already like kind of low on soul probably, and then it throws complete RNG enemies at you. That you have to then contend with, and it is painful. Yes, sir.
Nice parry.
Luckily, this section is a bit of a recharge.
Yeah, this is just, oh, you liked every enemy you've ever fought in Hollow? How about if you fought all of them back to back one more time real quick before the boss?
Yep.
Which also is the design philosophy behind Pantheon 5.
True. You know, I hadn't put that all together, but now it makes perfect sense. Oh, please. Okay. And I saved a bit of soul there to heal. And yeah.
Nice. So this is God Tamer. God Tamer is much easier than the Colosseum that came before her. Also, tip for both casual and speedruns, if you kill the Tamer, the Beast continues fighting on, but if you kill the Beast, the Tamer surrenders. So Math is just going to focus the Beast down here, because it speeds up the fight a whole bunch.
Yep. Another little fun fact, if you sidestep at the very end, it'll track your location, but then you can sidestep if it's doing the roll, and avoid that, that attack. You can use a Wraiths or a Shriek, and it does a ton of damage. God Tamer is pretty easy once you get that down. Okay, so here we go. We are gonna go do Grim now. So we're gonna head down to King's, where we will set up for the Grim quest. So that is probably like one of the last really terrifying parts of the run. Shoutouts to that inventory drop. Beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, this next segment is a much earned breather from Call of 3. It's much less likely that Math takes a death anywhere in these next couple of bosses. The bigger thing is just, this is the segment of Pantheon 5 where all of the story bosses sort of come up back to back. Our next 3 bosses in order are Troopmaster Grimm, followed by Watcher Knights, and then Umu, who the latter 2 of which are 2 bosses guarding Dreamers. Which is like the main story of the game. Remember that crazy thing? So the bigger thing here is just that it is so incredibly infuriating that we do not have Dreamgate at this point. In particular, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the Dreamers themselves, because you really want Dreamgate there, and we still can't have it. So once you've done 2 rounds of the Grim quest, Grim wants to check up on your babysitting progress, and he does that by sparring you to the death. Not quite to the death, I guess. He survives this one. But Grim is a great case study in double hits with Shade Soul. When he's in these balloon phases, which he does at every quarter of his health, you can double hit with Shade Soul right at the start. When he outstretches his arm for the Fire Bats attack, you saw Matt as well get a double hit on the outstretched arm earlier. And going for the spicy one there as he dashes away from you.
Yeah, so you can get double hits there, or you can get a full Wraiths in. Double hits are preferable, but they're not exactly guaranteed. So the full Wraiths hits deal 45 damage. The double hit with Shade Soul would deal 80, so it is better to do. But if you only get a single hit, it's only 40. It's a little bit iffy. Anyway, that's actually a pretty good Grim, all things considered.
Yeah, and it is customary to bow to Grim.
Yes.
In fact, if you don't bow to Grim, I hear your run isn't valid.
That's true.
You can tell other people I said that. But Grim, in addition to giving you an upgrade to Grim Child and unlocking the tier 3 of Grimkin, which also gives you 1 more charm notch. So in a run that does not pick up Fragile Heart, this is, I believe, when the 7th charm notch is typically grabbed.
Yep. And yeah, so this is pretty good for me because it gives me an 8th notch. So what I'm going to do now is swap off Grimchild, put on Dash Master and Wielder. So I get to have a little bit of zoomy speed here going into Watcher Knight.
Yeah, so Watcher Knights are fun because they're a boss that is the epicenter of the any percent speedrun, where you fight them with no equipment whatsoever, and it's easily one of the biggest pain points if you're getting started with a Hollow Knight any percent speedrun. Like, Watcher Knights are brutal. And then most other categories that care about fighting Watcher Knights do so when they have a lot of damage.
Yes.
And while this isn't the most damage that poor Watcher Knights have ever had to endure, it certainly is enough to make the fight a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, we're going to be pretty aggressive with this fight. With Shade Soul especially, it becomes a significantly easier fight. I would say, like, this is not the easiest they get, but it's definitely no any percent.
Yeah. And something else for casual playthroughs and speedruns alike, if you break the ceiling right before the fight, you can drop a chandelier on a Watcher Knight's head. It makes it so that you only have to fight 5 instead of 6. And I am no expert mathematician, but that sounds faster to me.
Yep. And so a bit like I was saying with Grim, you can use Shade Soul, you can use Wraiths, you can also use Dive, but generally Shade Soul only becomes good if you're getting at least 2 hits of it in. Wraiths is better if it's a single hit. That does count if I do 2 of the Watcher Knights with the same Shade Soul, but you have only a couple of chances to do with Wraiths. Usually it's going to be Shade Soul if you're hitting both of them at once.
Yeah. And something else we didn't talk to when upgrading Vengeful Spirit so long ago was that in addition to increased size and being able to go through walls, Shade Soul just has a buffed range over VS, so it's much easier to hit Watcher Knights all the way across the map with Shade Soul than it is with Vengeful Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so now we pick up the first Dreamer, finally. This is pretty late into the run, you may notice. This timer, I'm about an hour 46 into this run, and we're finally getting a Dreamer. We do, in fact, need all 3 of them because we will be finishing the run on Hollow Knight and Radiance. So we'll be getting all the Dreamers here. Probably the most frustrating part about getting the Dreamer at this point in the run is that it's actually still not late enough because we still don't have Dreamgate. All of these Dreamer pickups are hard saves, so I don't get to abuse the mechanic that I've been using, which is save and quitting anytime I want to go back to my latest bench, because it will put me right where I just was. So instead, I'm going to have to walk back from the Dreamers to continue to the next section.
Yeah, and the next boss in the order, like I mentioned before, is Umu, so we're going right from Dreamer 1 to Dreamer 2, so we'll just tuck our tail between our legs and just do a lot of walking here.
Yep. But it's a fun little jaunt. Trust me.
Yeah, shout out to Lurian's Butler, by the way, over there. Fun fact about Lurian's Butler, despite being a vanilla enemy that appears in many spots of the game, like one of those Husk Dandies, I think is the official name, Lurian's Butler, if you kill him, never respawns.
That is true. Why would you know this, Quack?
Why would I know this? One of the runs that the world is not ready for yet is the Snowgrave, we'll go with, playthrough of Hollow Knight, where you kill every non-respawning entity in the entire game. Boss, NPC, random enemy alike. That is, so I know a lot about the mortality status of a lot of things in this video game.
Yeah, so a pet category of Quacks there. Definitely a run.
Here's the thing, given enough time, and given enough Hollow Knight runners, add enough typewriters, not only can we create the complete works of Shakespeare, but we will devise a category for every single one of those works.
Beautiful. Okay, so here is actually where I'm going to be able to use the fact that I took a shortcut earlier and head up from Queens to go to Umu here.
I would just like to take a moment to call Cthulhu out and point out that the notes for, like, the route notes that we are following for this run, the entry for Umu specifically says 1 cycle Umu with poise and grace, and I love that so much.
Yeah, we'll see how much poise and grace there is in this fight. I'm guessing not as much as I would imagine, but we'll try our best.
Yeah, so Umu, again, in any percent, the goal is to 2-cycle Umu. Umu has long invulnerable phases, as well as the RNG capacity to throw in extra attacks in its invulnerable phase, so Umu is quite a frustrating boss. Fortunately, in most categories with damage, it's possible to kill Umu in 1 vulnerable phase once we are aided by our buddy Coral.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting scenario. So we have Shade Soul, which is a thing that a lot of categories have when fighting Umu, but it's not a thing that I've ever actually learned to 1-cycle Umu with. Luckily, I also have Spell Twister, which allows me to cast 1 additional spell. Oh, but I'm screwed because we got an extra. Well, all right.
Nail 2 also helps. Umu is one of those bosses whose health does not scale, so there is actually a save here potentially. Nope,
I think I needed to be faster, but we maybe could have done it. But yeah, Umu has a flat 300 HP, but the extra meant that Umu was far too high in that first phase. So I couldn't go straight into the cycle that I have learned, which is basically spam Shade Soul and hope that it kills.
All right, but a 2-cycle is nothing to shake a stick at, and thankfully there is no more Umu.
Yes, our Umu days are done. We can use the fact that I have Ismas just a little bit, which is kind of fun. You can skip all this acid pretty trivially when you don't have Ismas tier and you have this kind of movement. Check out any percent run for how to do it. Although wall-cling storage method from older patches won't work here.
Yeah, the Umu fight, I think I see someone in chat mention this, but the Umu fight, as well as Teacher's Archives in general, is another one of those areas of the game that behaves notably differently on the latest patch of the game as opposed to 1.2.2.1. Umu is a lot more bouncy on current patch. And so the fight is a lot more annoying.
Yeah.
Not that 1.2.2.1 Umu is not very frustrating, especially at high-level speedruns, because an extra attack can just ruin your whole day.
That is true. Umu extras are never a good time, no matter what category you're running. They get less bad when you're running long categories, luckily. I actually only lost 0.3 seconds on that split, so, we'll take it.
Nice.
I'm actually on a minute and a half ahead of my PB at the moment. So
I told you. Hotfix world record, I believe.
Yeah, no, I need to save another 7 or so minutes for world record, but I could
believe. So this is the part, next up boss in our order is Nosk, and the reason for that in Pantheon 5 is that this is where Pantheon 5, the actual boss rush, likes to pull a jump scare on you, because in Pantheon 5, Nosk is replaced by Winged Nosk, who instead of disguising as the Knight, disguises as Hornet, and in the earlier Pantheons, you're expecting to see the second Hornet fight there. So Team Cherry pulls a little sneaky one on you, and it's a surprise Nosk fight instead. Also, I like to theorize that the reason for Nosk's placement here is also because Hera, the third Dreamer, is not actually guarded by a boss. It's guarded by a little mini dungeon called Beast Den. And Nosk is the geographically closest boss to Beast Den. So in a way, it is sort of the Hera boss. So you get all three of those bosses in a row.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely why they've done it. Because they also pulled Umu, they pulled Watcher Knight out of order compared to where Watcher Knight appears in the Pantheons to put them before Umu. And then, having Nosk appear right after, I think it is for the Dreamer connection, and it's kind of cute. I like it.
Little one more holding breath for the Garpedes, please.
Yeah,
we are
see
clear.
How this goes. Well, this room too. Yeah.
One more room. I know where we are in
We're
deepness.
never clear. Maybe I shouldn't do the damage tanks. What if
the
that's
odds of you being
problem?
ambushed by a Garpede is low, but never zero. Nice.
Okay, that's better.
All right. So Nosk is the boss behind that little secret wall that Math opened up with a fireball. Oh, I don't know. Fully an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, I think literally an hour and a half ago. It's been a little bit. I'm glad you all.
Not even saving the Nosk grub. Wow, we are going for speed.
Listen.
Let's go. PB brain engaged.
Listen, I was using a spell and not Cyclone. If I was using Cyclone, I would have saved it.
PB brain, you love to see it.
That's true.
But yeah, so Nosk. As you said before, Nosk has a souped-up version in Godhome, but we only care about bosses in the overworld, so we're just doing lovely little vanilla Nosk. So we get this fun little jump scare where, hey, look, it's us. Oh, wait, no, it's Giant Spider.
Yes, and this is honestly one of the coolest little sequences in the game. If you haven't played Hollow Knight casually, it's very, very fun to go through here.
Yeah, I'm very blasé about it now. Math and I also both have, between us, a good handful of thousands of hours in this game.
Yes.
This game is very cool, and you should play it if you haven't played it already.
Absolutely. I will always shill Hollow Knight, especially as a casual game, but also as a speed game, and especially as a randomizer. I would say these are all fantastic modes to play this game in, and you shouldn't miss any of them. All right, beautiful.
Nice, clean Nosk fight. Nosk is guarding a Pale Ore, which is one of the things you need to upgrade your nail. But we have already finished our nail upgrades for the run, so once again, we're back to quitting out immediately as soon as the boss turns orange.
There we go. Took me a minute to decide what I wanted for charms, but...
Yeah, and so Math has re-equipped Grimchild here. The Tier 3 Grimkin are a little bit unique of the Grim Quest, because you actually have a choice in what Grim Flames you get. You need 3 of a possible 4, and the reason for that is because there's an NPC that Math is on his way to named Brum, who is the keystone for the alternate ending to the Grim Quest line, where you banish the troop instead of fighting the Nightmare King. Brum, even if you don't banish, which obviously we won't be because we have to fight NKG, even if you don't banish the troop, Brum is still capable of giving you a Grim Flame, and that's very good news for us because the Tier 3 Grimkin are the most nail-scaling enemies in the entire game, so they are a real pain to have to fight with an upgraded nail. So being able to skip one of them is a godsend.
Yeah, they are also probably the scariest part of this run. Like, they deal double damage. We never get more health. It's very, very painful to kill them. So they are very easy to die to. Luckily, deaths to the tier 3 Grimkin don't lose too much time. So it's not like the worst thing in the universe, but
yeah. They're all
cutting
close
one of them
enough
out,
to benches.
Yeah. Cutting one of them out, though, is definitely good.
Yes. So this is Beast Den. We're actually not going to do most of Beast Den because if you have the wings, there is a hole in the ceiling that you can do to skip having to sit on the trapped bench and skip most of Beast Den in terms of movement. So just one little stalking devout who cannot take 3 Shade Souls to the face, and we now have all 3 Dreamers. Unfortunately for us, we still have a little shy of half of the bosses to go through before we can beat the game.
Yep, we're not quite done yet, but at least we have all of our Dreamers. So yeah, up next we get to do Hornet finally. Those of you who have played Pantheon 5 might know that Sly is actually the boss that appears here. Once again, we will not be visiting the Nail Masters in the Overworld as part of this run because they are not bosses there. So instead we skip over to Hornet, who will be the next boss that we fight. And then we can finally go to the Abyss. It's been a million years since I picked up Wraiths, and we will finally be able to get Shriek in just a couple of splits here. So bear with us, chat.
Yeah, and you have Hidden Station Stag at this point, right? Is this the final Stag Station?
This is the final Stag Station, yes.
This is the final. So with this, we have incidentally, just through no additional effort on Matt's part, in just a moment, time will be coming up for our secret hidden run of all Stag Stations.
Little did you know, it's only about an hour and a half behind world record, but you know what? It's definitely one of the fastest runs that you've seen, I'm sure. 2-for-1 special of Hollow Knight meme runs. That's not technically true because in order to finish an all Stag Stations run, you actually need to go. There's a secret Stag Station, the Stag Nest, that is unlocked when you have them all. And visiting that Stag Nest is the actual end state for that run, but we've completed it in spirit. Yep.
So now we're running back out to Kingdom's Edge for what is shockingly still not the final time this run. To go fight. We come to KE. If you count Collector, well, I guess you continue in KE from Collector. It's still 4 times.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Very silly.
We do this acid skip twice. You'll notice, I was able to skip it again here with Ismas. If you don't have Ismas, then you have to skip that acid, and we have to come through there twice. So this is actually the second time we do that exact acid skip in this run, which is really, really funny to me. But yes, this ignore that little spike there. That was totally intended. Yeah, this is actually one of the again, more difficult acid skips, so getting Ismas really saves us a bit of headache there.
Yeah, and this is Hornet Sentinel, often abbreviated to Hornet 2. She's just a lot faster. She has a parry now, which she is very helpfully demonstrating how infuriating that is.
Oh yeah, just using nothing but parries.
It's great if you cast a spell and she parries it, because the number of freeze frames you get is conservatively 4 billion.
Yeah, and then you also get hit, of course. So,
Yeah, and you take damage.
It's just fantastic. Definitely one of the most beloved aspects of this boss is her propensity to parry. Certainly not a source of frustration for any or all of us. Okay,
yeah,
pretty quick
with
fight
nail
with the
2
damage.
and spells, yeah.
All right, and we can finally pick up the King's Brand. Again, as I mentioned, this is going to finally allow us into the Abyss, but we will take a little bit of time before we actually go there. And you'll see why sort of shortly. Not all that shortly, but a little bit shortly. The main reason is that we actually still don't have Dreamgate. You may have noticed that we haven't picked up any Essence in the last 7 or 8 bosses that we've killed, so we're still sitting at about 650. That is not enough to get Dreamgate. We need 900. So it won't be until after we kill Lostkin that we can finally get it. And Dreamgate, it turns out, is very useful coming back from the Abyss because it allows us to not have to climb up after we pick up Shade Cloak. So once again, no Dreamgate here. That is a hard save that Hornet drops us off at, so we have to go back through Kingdom's Edge and into King's, where I will be finally able to leave.
Yep, and next up on the list is Enraged Guardian. So we're going back into Crystal Peak. Thankfully, we can finally start checking off some areas. This will be our last trip into Crystal Peak. Yes. Only Crystal and Enraged Guardians are the only bosses that exist there. Enraged Guardian is not too bad of a fight. The core conceit is that it's just Crystal Guardian but mad, and what mad means is faster and dealing double damage. So it's a fight where you can very easily die if you're sort of asleep at the wheel, because he hits like a truck, but ultimately pretty comfy, especially when you have as much damage as Math does at this point.
Yeah. The fact that he does double damage always makes it a bit scary. You can get kind of, bullied a little bit, but it's not too bad. Also, to answer questions in chat that I'm seeing, this run does not do the Path of Pain. It is not necessary for any of the bosses. So I will not be doing it as part of this run here, but, I'm sure if we had bonus incentives, it would be a good one to add to this run, because it is in fact
because we're already visiting so much of the map.
Exactly, it's basically just off the path that we take, but we don't actually do it.
We choose to opt for a slightly less painful one.
Yes.
Comedy. Anyway, this is Enraged Guardian.
So yeah, you'll see me using Dive a little bit to get those sweet invincibility frames. We also comically don't need any of this Geo, so I'm just going to quit out immediately. That Geo is quite a lot of it. There's 400 something. I think, Quack, you may know. But maybe 500 something.
I was about to say it's more than that. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know it offhand.
Yeah, it's a lot of Geo, and we are ignoring all of it because we already have over 3,000 Geo and literally nothing to spend it on. Colosseums basically give us all the money we need, but all the money we need is actually very early in the run to buy Lantern before we ever even fight Soulmaster. So.
Yeah. And also with Enraged Guardian, we have finally entered the Pantheon 4-alike segment of the run, so we are in the home stretch now. For sure, and that is also a good way of driving home just how late into the run we are finally able to fight dream bosses like Lostkin.
Yes.
We opened up this shortcut to Lostkin, an hour ago. A while ago, maybe not quite that long, but certainly a while, and only now after this fight will we finally get the 900 essence required for Dreamgate. Lostkin, dream bosses are a souped up version of the base boss, so Lostkin is Broken Vessel, but a lot faster, and trades in the headbanging attack that's quite easy to pile on damage for these constantly spawning little mini infected balloons that make the fight very challenging casually. Good casual strat is if you have the Spore Shroom Charm, you can heal much more safely because the infected balloons only have 1 HP, and so the Spore Cloud will pop them.
Sure. Yeah, Defender's Crust is also a favorite casually. I would say the first time I beat Lostkin, it was with Defender's Crust equipped, and I definitely took quite a while before I was able to do it without. But there is a strat where you can keep Lostkin staggered if you have Descending Dark, which I definitely recommend to anybody struggling with the boss casually to give a try. But it's effectively what I'm doing there with Dive. But you do it with Descending Dark and then hit him 3 more times. And here I'm going to take an intentional Death Warp out, which saves a bit of time over having to sit through the whole death animation.
Yeah, Lostkin likes to bow to you a lot. He does it after he dies too, or I guess more of a little head nod. But you have credit for the boss defeat much earlier than that cutscene.
Yeah. All right, here we go. So finally we can go and get our Dreamgate, and that's the very first thing that we're going to do. We're quitting back out to Hidden Station, and we will go to the Seer, not for the last time, to go and pick up our Dreamgate.
Yeah, Dreamgate is massively important to get.
Yes.
If it were much harder to actually acquire, we would still get it right now, because teleporting good in a Metroidvania, who would have thought?
Yes. This is honestly like probably the biggest pain point of the run, is that we can't get Dreamgate until this point. We lose a ton of time to it. That's why we considered doing a bunch of dream trees throughout the run. Unfortunately, didn't end up saving time overall with the amount of time it took. But yeah, we got Dreamgate, so let's use it, is what I say. And we're going to set it right there. We'll be coming back in a little bit. But we are going to quit back out to Hidden Station and go on down to pick up our Shade Cloak and our Abyss Shriek, finally.
Yeah, so the King's Brand that Hornet gave us is our ticket into the Abyss. Yeah, we're just doing a quick tour right now for a couple upgrades. We'll be back a little bit later for one of the final upgrades of the run, although really it's more of a glorified key.
Yes.
But the Abyss Shriek is the most powerful spell in the game. It deals 120 damage with Shaman equipped, so it is analogous to a triple hitting fireball. And we have been kept away from it for so long, but fortunately, a lot of the last bosses in the run are particularly susceptible to Abyss Shriek because they fly, or are otherwise positioned above the knight for long periods of time. So it is still worth grabbing to have a lot of damage
Yes.
in some of those last fights.
Yeah, so to put it in perspective, Shade Soul is dealing 40 damage, Wraiths is dealing 45, Abyss Shriek will deal 120. It is a huge upgrade on Howling Wraiths, and yeah, it's definitely worth it. All right, so away we go. We will pick up Shade Cloak while we're down here and avoid the hard save by a save and quit out. Or sorry, not a save and quit out, by a Dreamgate out now that we finally got it. Most areas that would benefit from the Dreamgate are unfortunately before we get it, but this one, at least, we can take advantage of.
Yeah, and it is a fairly massive time save. Climbing all the way out of the Abyss manually is quite long. Something we will still have to do anyway after a fashion because of our second trip to the Abyss, but that's a little bit different, and so anything we can do to avoid some of the extra time just walking around the map is a good thing. That was a very clean lighthouse climb.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one. I can't remember if it's safe to dive anywhere here. Oh, sure. But yeah, the next boss on our list is actually No Eyes, which you wouldn't know from what I'm doing. But again, finally being able to get Shade Cloak because we have King's Brand and also Dreamgate to get out quickly means I'm going to do it as soon as I can because Shade Cloak is helpful. So especially with Shriek as well. So we do a little save and quit here to avoid a cutscene that happens as soon as you pick up Shade Cloak. So now we're respawning in with Shade Cloak, and we are going to Dreamgate out.
Yeah, and a major reason for that is that Hollow Knight is conventionally timed with loads removed. I don't actually know. I think the Shade Cloak quit out might still be faster in real time.
Yeah, I think it's like even RTA or like close to it, but it saves time loadless, which is how we mainly time our runs.
Yeah, there are a number of small pieces of tech sprinkled throughout Hollow Knight runs that are keyed off of the fact that your transition load time is not counted in your final runtime.
Yep. I would definitely say it's for the most part, the fact that save and quits are used is actually for routing and not for just little timer tricks. But there are a couple of places where it saves time only loadless and it's still used. But save and quits, as their main vehicle in this run is to be able to quit out back somewhere across the map where you last took a bench. And I think that makes for really fun routing personally.
Yeah, especially because in this run, it's kind of all we got.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, can you imagine Pantheon 5 boss order no save and quits?
Oh, don't get me started, by which I mean I'll get started after this. No, this is No Eyes. No Eyes is curious in that No Eyes is the only thing in the game that is actually gated behind Lantern. The only meaningful thing in the game. Randomizer players, please don't come for my head with that. But No Eyes simply will not spawn in unless you have Lumafly Lantern. So even though you could walk through this dark room ordinarily, it is required by this point in the run to have Lantern in order to actually start this fight. Fortunately, because of the routing intricacies, we have Lantern much, much earlier. This is a shining example of the health scaling of Warrior Dreams. A Nail 0 No Eyes would be super dead by now, but instead, Nail 2 No Eyes is trolling math quite a lot.
Yeah, just a bit. Tip for any casual players fighting No Eyes, there's a safe spot down at the bottom platform where you can heal. I took advantage of it a second ago, but yeah, that was a pretty rude No Eyes. If you're very lucky, she'll just kind of float above you and you'll be able to use a couple of shrieks and she dies. I was not so lucky, but that's okay.
Yeah, even with the nail scaling, Shriek is really just that good. The problem is shrieking into No Eyes is a losing gamble.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to Queen's Gardens, which is here. I'm actually going to trade Dashmaster for Heart here, I think, just as a precaution. Trader Lord is another boss that does double damage, and it can be a little bit dangerous. So I'm just going to put Heart on to be sure that we don't die.
Yep, and so with Trader Lord, because of Abyss Shriek, we are actually able to move through Trader Lord's health pool a little bit faster. At the start of the fight, Trader Lord is going to drop in from the ceiling after a couple of waves of smaller Mantis enemies, and while he is busy spawning in, he's still vulnerable to Abyss Shriek, so Math is going to ideally drop as many Abyss Shrieks as possible up into the Trader Lord's like little spawn smoke before the fight even begins, which can basically cut his health in half for the actual fight if he gets several full hit shrieks. Something else to note is this is another major difference, as with most of Queen's Garden, between patches of the game. On 1.2.2.1, Trader Lord is not even really a boss. On 1.2.1, Trader Lord only deals 1 damage instead of 2, does not have this attack where he spawns the giant shockwaves, and also has less than half of the health he does on current patch. So truly, this was made to be an actual boss encounter on the more recent patches of the game. And yeah. I think it was appropriate to do so. This was still a very fast fight, but that is because Abyss Shriek is very good.
Yes, this is one of the fights where Abyss Shriek really pays off, and you see it in kind of immediate fashion. It's definitely a fight that can drag on if you don't have Abyss Shriek. So yeah, definitely one of the better ones. Nail 2 is also kind of helpful here. A lot of categories do this fight with Nail 0, and that's true of a lot of the later fights in this. It's mostly just Colosseums that we get the Nail upgrades for in the end.
Yep, and with that we've also picked up half of the King's Soul. This is, once again, we're back to that weird and wild world of story progression. This is half of the MacGuffin charm that is going to unlock the true ending of the game, which, again, since we are sticking to the overworld, we're not going to be dealing with absolute radiance, but we do need to finish out on radiance, so that means we will need to complete the King's Soul and get Void Heart before finishing out the game. But not quite yet. Next up on our boss order is White Defender.
Yes, White Defender is the upgraded version of Dung Defender, who we fought extremely early in the run. Some of you may remember. We actually did also open this shortcut earlier, which will save us from having to gather soul here. Otherwise, we need to get a dive here. So you may not have fought this boss casually. I know I didn't find him at all. It wasn't until I went to Godhome that I first found this boss. A little bit hidden there with the little secret dive floor, but definitely, honestly, a pretty fun boss. I think it's one of the more difficult ones, and one that actually... Of course, we get volleyball immediately. This does not save time when we only have Nail 2, so I won't be doing it, but you can juggle indefinitely.
Yeah, unlike Dug Defender, White Defender never staggers, like he never stuns, so if he does that little bouncy ball attack, you can just up-slash him and walk under him and fully deplete his health that way. It's quite slow unless you have a fully upgraded nail, unfortunately, so Math is opting for, as we do, a spell-based damage rotation here.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, White Defender is also interesting in that he has upgraded versions. So if you defeat him once, then you can actually redo the fight and you'll have a little bit of extra health and deal 1 additional damage. And this continues up to a level 5. Man, I'm just getting all sorts of volleyballs here. And it gets very difficult. At level 5, he deals 5 damage, and that's pretty hard. But it is also, I would say, not the harder of the bosses that does that. GPZ is the other one. GPZ also does this little trick of having a harder version if you beat him. And that goes up to level 10, actually, where he deals a whopping, 8 masks of damage? Something like that, Quack?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Level 10 Grey Prince Zote is unbridled chaos. Because even his walk is so fun. We'll talk. Grey Prince Zote is not a terribly long fight, and I know Math and I have been hyping it up for basically 2.5 hours at this point. As we should, is the best boss. But we're almost there. We've got a couple of little interstitial bosses that are some of the hardest bosses in the game to deal with before we get there. First up is Soul Tyrant, the Dream Boss version of Soul Master. So it's back to Sanctum.
Yes, indeed. And I do need to come back down here. Finally, we're going for Soul Tyrant. Again, we've been to Sanctum not once, not twice, or no, not once, but twice in this. And this is the 3rd time we're finally going to come here in order to finally finish this one out by killing Soul Tyrant, the dream version of the Soul Warrior. We use this little shortcut that we actually opened before. You can go through the floor there if you're sneaky. And that's what we do. So this is a pretty quick return. I will get that soul, and then we'll go into the fight. This is another fight where we really do want Shade Soul and Shriek, both of them very, very useful here. It's very long regardless.
Yeah, and so in keeping with the tradition of Dream Bosses being souped-up versions of their base boss, where Lostkin was sort of the technique boss with the spawning ads, and White Defender was the health boss with the never staggering. Soul Tyrant is the speed boss. He spawns more orbs. All of his attacks come at you much, much faster. He's also not too shabby in terms of the health pool, but his random teleports can be chained together a large number of times. I don't know the exact maximum value, but it's instant cross-map teleports into shooting orbs at you, and it can really make the fight drag on. Fortunately, this is a pretty good pattern, yeah.
Yeah, got kind of lucky with most of that. I definitely played it poorly in the middle, but yeah.
And Phase 2 of Soul Tyrant is exactly like Phase 2 of Soul Master, it's just that everything is like twice as fast.
How are you not dead? Wow. Jeez. I honestly was surprised there. That
was a little spicy there. It is possible to soft lock if you hit the boss at the same time it hits you. Finish off the boss at the same time it hits you.
Really?
Get
I don't think I've ever had that.
Stuck in the screen forever. But we're through with that. Math is also now done collecting essence. You need to collect 1,800 essence in order to get the Awoken Dream Nail, which we need to complete the true ending of the game. There is additional completion percentage locked behind having 2,400 essence, which is what all of these bosses are there for. But it is just completion percentage, so while 112% will get it, Pantheon 5 boss order does not care. So this will mostly matter because you'll see Math quit out from some bosses without actually picking up their essence at the end of this run here. And we are going back to Kingdom's Edge for truly, for real, actually, I swear, the final time to finish off Markov.
Yep. Every time we think we're done, we aren't really until now. Now, this is finally the last time we'll be here, and we're going to finish off Markoth. Markoth, as you know in Pantheon 5, if you've played it at all, is one of the hardest bosses, actually, because he doesn't have a floor. Luckily, we don't have to face such limitations here, and Markoth is very floorful. That is what we like to see.
I love it when my bosses are floorful.
Same.
But yeah, but Markoth is another contender for like most aggressive nail scaling in the game. You've seen Matt put fully 2.5, maybe even 3 shrieks into him, and he is still standing. But that is a dead Markoth.
That is Markoth, friends. It's a pain. So yeah, I don't need to sit around and wait for the essence, so I can actually just quit out. Oh, it's not a quit out. I always forget. It's a dream gate here. It's fine. We're doing fine. We're doing fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really isn't too bad because we already have as much essence as we need, and we actually dreamgate directly back to the seer to go pick up our awoken nail.
Yep. So at this point, we are technically in the Grey Prince Zot split, which is good because it means we can vamp by talking about how awesome Grey Prince Zot is. But this is really the cleanup phase of the run. Matt has awoken Dreamnail now, so we are going to finish up the Grim quest to make sure we can fight Nightmare King Grim later. We're going to finish up the Void Heart quest in order to be able to get the true ending, because at this point, all of the bosses remaining, we've got Grey Prince Zot, Failed Champion, Nightmare King Grim, and then the end game, are all in or very close to Dirtmouth. So we're going to do all of the remaining cleanup and then head back to town to finish things. So first up, I believe, is White Palace, yes? Or are we doing Grim stuff first?
White Palace first, Grim stuff afterward. So we are going to swap Heart for Dashmaster here. And then we're going to go do White Palace. So this is, like Quack is saying, basically the cleanup phase here. White Palace is probably the longest bit of that cleanup, but with the Grim Quest in there too, there's quite a lot. So this split for me is about 12 and a half, 13 minutes long. So it's a very long and painful split. We still don't have D-Dark. I'm still not used to it. It's fine.
Yeah.
But
White
we
Palace,
get to do a lot
course,
of fun stuff.
Somewhat infamous for being a major bump in difficulty in terms of platforming in this game. Because a lot of the game doesn't ask that you care about your platforming precision in quite the same way as White Palace, and obviously especially Path of Pain, which I know Chat has alluded to. We won't be seeing that in this run, but that is the special hidden extra souped up challenge area hidden away in White Palace. But yeah, it's a big jump. Fortunately, there are a lot of very, very cool pieces of speed tech, some deliberately included by the devs, and some that are just the ingenuity of the speedrunning community. And the movement in this, sticky corner.
Yeah.
The movement in this is very, very pretty, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I really love White Palace done well. Unfortunately, y'all will have to see me do White Palace tonight, which is not quite as pretty, but you know, it's still pretty good. It's nice. I like White Palace a lot.
Runner calls their own run bad. In other news, water remains wet.
So true. So yeah, there's 2 main sections to the middle of White Palace. There's the left side atrium, which has 1 big skip here, where you go underneath and do a little C-dash over here. And we will see another big skip in the right side atrium, which also skips a pretty large segment of that. So yeah, major skips, and it makes it not quite as bad. This room is still the absolute bane of my existence, and I have died here in the past because these saws are nightmare, but it's fine.
I think I was walled here casually for like that saw blade gauntlet for like fully 20 minutes. Just those 9 saw blades or whatever. That is tough to get down.
Yeah, I think it's not quite as bad. There's like 1 bit late in White Palace that has sort of spikes moving up and down that we skip entirely, and I am very grateful that we do, because casually that took me probably half an hour at least. It was very painful. But yeah, now we're heading on over to right side atrium. Once again, there's going to be 1 big skip. You won't see it just yet. but you'll see it in a minute. Almost went too far.
I was about to say, that was some spicy saw blade dodging there.
It's fine. We're fine. This is probably, I think, my favorite skip in White Palace, but it's also not easy. It's very easy to get kind of in a groove here where you're very... See, there it is, where you're very stuck, but there it is. So you do a little pogo over the saw, and you dash over it, and bam, you're free.
Yeah, I was doing this room casually just to, like, remember it. Also, Dev's put a dive floor there, so there's a dive floor there if you don't want to do that little saw blade fall. But no, the big room that Matt skipped in right atrium, I was doing it casually a little while ago. I don't honestly remember why, but truly I had forgotten just how massive that room actually is to go through in the intended fashion.
Yeah, it's quite slow, so that skip saves a big chunk of time. And then we've got one more skip that is not exactly dev intended. I don't know if this is dev intended, honestly.
Yeah, the background object is there, but also there's a lot of stuff you're not doing with this. Who's to say? Team Cherry, enjoy cool things. I choose to believe it was put there on purpose, but we pogo that lamppost to skip having to go around the right side of this room.
Yep. This is just a tiny little skip that doesn't really skip anything. And then we've got one more very much dev intended shortcut that we're going to use up here.
Yeah. Nice little breakable
This wall is breakable, and that allows us to skip that whole segment. And then we got a little fast cycle here to get through there. So yeah, that's most of White Palace. One final skip before we're done. This one very much not dev intended, I'm pretty sure, but it's fun. This one can be a bit of a pain. Nope.
Because of those thorns. Oh, bad hazard respawn.
That is a hazard respawn, huh? I thought this was a hazard respawn. Did I not sit there?
I guess you must not have actually touched the trigger box. Yeah. White Palace was going too well.
That's true.
Had to spice things up a little bit.
Exactly. But yeah, that's the last little skip. You can actually get up to that wall, but those thorns tend to cause a little bit of trouble. So luckily we were able to avoid them on the second pass there. So that skip's probably, in my opinion, those last two skips there skip the worst parts of White Palace for me casually. But unfortunately, we do still have to do that one little saw section, which is currently and will forever be the bane of my existence.
Yep, and that's the Pale King. He matters a great deal if you care about the lore of this game, but we're busy speedrunning, so we just beat him up and steal his jewelry.
Absolutely. Maybe I should have shown off the nursery while I was here. There's a lot of fun little hidden areas. Yeah. All right.
So, yeah, we're not quite done with the true ending quest. We need to turn that King Soul into Void Heart, but nothing is stopping us from doing it right now.
Yes.
So, you take tram bench here. I was like, where are you going?
Yes. Nothing's stopping us except for a little detour to do some Grimkin. So we will be doing the Grim quest right now, and then going and getting Void Heart as soon as we're done with that. Okay, I have a bit of a problem here, which is that I need soul. Good. Problem solved.
Nice. Yeah, tier 3 Grimkin have uncomfy nail scaling, and because they fly and shoot projectiles at you and also flame pillars and are just generally despicable, thank you, Grimkin, for demonstrating for me.
Yeah.
You want as much soul as possible. That was really good. That can get way more out of hand.
Absolutely. So this is one of the scarier parts of the run, I'm not going to lie. It's very easy to die to these. They deal double damage. They're very painful. As you saw, 4 Shade Souls does not kill them. They last for seemingly eternity. It's not great. All right, so we're going to go get one more Grimkin, and then we will be just about done with our cleanup. We'll finally head and get Void Heart after this. And then we'll be almost free, friends. We'll be finally on to the best boss in the game, Grey Prince Zote.
Oh, Grey Prince Zote, my beloved, but not the terrible character, but amazing boss.
Yes.
Like, bad dude.
Bad
Fun to beat up.
But, intentionally bad dude. It's a dude that's bad in a way that's narratively satisfying.
Yeah.
And very fun to fight.
and also has the best music in the game. Come at me, NKG music enjoyers.
True. The nice thing about fighting every boss in the game is that you get to decide what the best music is in a completely unbiased way. You get to hear all of it in a single run.
Alright, that double hit was very nice.
Let's
Two
go.
doubles.
Two
Let's
doubles.
go.
Oh, okay. I don't want that. I want to Dream Gate out.
Alright, that's the Grim Quest wrapped up. Now I gotta
Beautiful.
go cash it in Voidheart.
Yep. Okay, so now I need to put on King Soul, which I will do now, and head on down to go pick up Voidheart. All right. So yeah, we're very near the end of the run. These are the last 5 bosses?
Final 4, yeah.
Yeah, we got this, then we have Failed Champion, NKG, and then THK and Radiance. So yeah, good time. This section in Pantheon 5 is very, very painful if you're doing it for the first time. Or even not for the first time if you're doing it with bindings, if you're doing it for the second, third, fourth time, it doesn't matter. This section is very, very hard. Markoth into Grey Prince Zote is very difficult, and it kills a lot of runs of people doing Pantheon 5. So luckily it's not quite so bad in Pantheon 5 boss order, but it's still, you know, plenty of stuff to throw off the run in this segment.
Yeah, fortunately, powering down a lot of the bosses into their overworld forms. No Pure Vessel, Markoth has a floor, obviously no Absolute Radiance is really nice. It's really nice for the overall runs finished percentage. Earlier I said we would still have to climb out of the Abyss. That's because when you go to the birthplace with King Soul equipped, there's this little cutscene-esque thing where Math proves that he's in control of his own destiny by dunking into spikes. You'll notice there's no UI here. You can't actually die. You have to finish out the cutscene, but...
Yes. Which is, you know, at times useful. Definitely good when you're doing this for the first time casually, because there's a lot of places that you can find yourself jumping head first into spikes, including, as you saw right there at the beginning, if you are me. Oh, please, come on.
How did you miss that trigger?
I have no idea. I could have sworn I was high enough, but it's okay.
Yeah, and with that is our cleanup. We're going to get a little cutscene. Very important lore is happening. Again, not for us to discuss right now. And the King Soul is going to become the Voidheart, which means we now have every piece of equipment we need to finish out the game. And so now it's just go, go, go. We got a couple bosses left in order to do, starting with the best one, Grey Prince Zote. Here's the thing about Grey Prince Zote. I contend that Grey Prince Zote is a perfectly designed gag boss, right? Because he's this souped up boss fight of a character that you've previously fought who is completely ineffectual. And the fight is so good at showcasing how, even in the souped up fan fiction dreams of Zote's girlfriend, he's still ineffectual. This is a man who throws himself at the ground and misses. How can you not love the energy?
Oh no, friends. We gave Quack a mic on which to wax poetic about GPZ for at least the next 2 minutes. I should have known.
Yeah, shoutouts also to, as Matt alluded to earlier, you can see there are 10 Zotes in the background. There are 10 levels of GPZ. He gains health for the first 4, and then he starts doing more and more damage. He also starts moving faster, can summon different minions. They get faster, do more damage. The whole fight is just some Mario Party type nonsense at high levels, and doing it with low equipment is a sublime challenge. But also when you have a lot of equipment like Matt does here, he's a pretty consistent boss fight. You just get real close, bear hug him, but with Abyss Shriek.
Oops. Yeah, that pretty much is the way of things. And, you know, he's pretty fun, I would say, in basically all his forms, but the way that you fight GPZ in Pantheon Pantheon 3 and 5. Oh no, I wasn't close enough. I think is the best form. It's not a particularly... he doesn't have much more health, but what he does is have his full range of attacks. In this form, where he's in his first level, he only gets one kind of special Zotling add, and it's probably the easiest to deal with, and that's kind of sad. We want more Zote. At least I do.
I mean, there is the Eternal Ordeal. If you want truly an unconscionable amount of Zote, but that's a speedrun for another time. We've got to finish strong here.
Yes.
This is Failed Champion. It's so funny that False Knight is, well, not quite the first. One of the first bosses, the first boss that we saw in this run, and Failed Champ is truly so close to the end. That's for good reason. Failed Champ is brutal. Double damage, drops rocks from the ceiling at you, much faster, much tankier, is just a powerhouse. Fortunately, and sing it with me if you've heard this one before, Abyss Streak is very good.
Yep, that's the power of Abyss Shriek, and we will be using that for this entire fight. So actually what happens with Failed Champ when you have Shriek is you use it 4 times and he dies. So GG.
That just seems OP.
It's just
That's
a little.
incredible.
It is
Just a little OP.
It is a great comedy of this game that it is very clearly balanced very finely around nail scaling in a way that it's not like the spell damage being so good makes the game unplayable. In fact, it makes for a lot of very interesting speedruns, but it's so clear that like it feels a little bit dirty to be doing as much damage as you do so consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. It is also easy to get, like, if you miss one of those shrieks, life gets a lot harder, because you don't get soul when you hit Failed Champ, so you have to try to get your soul another way, and it's actually pretty difficult to fight Failed Champ without soul. So luckily he does die in 4 shrieks there. That makes it a very easy fight, but there are definitely iterations in that fight where you have almost as much damage that can easily cascade to a death. Anyway, here's NKG.
Here is Nightmare King Grim, also another solid contender for Best Boss and Best Boss Music. Nightmare King Grim, the Dream Boss souped up version of Grim. You'll recognize a lot of these attacks from the first Grim phase, but meaner in a lot of ways. This is another really fun fight. I am a big sucker for this fight without Abyss Streak, actually. There is a speedrun category that is just NKG percent. There's just beat Nightmare King Grim from a fresh file as fast as possible, where you have a lot less stuff, like no iframes, no Shade Cloak or Dive, and no Abyss Streak. And that is a very, very fun, like, brutal fight. Here, we are once again taking healthy advantage of Abyss Streak, especially in balloon phases and when Grim does the Pillars attack, because he helpfully puts himself right on screen stationary for us. Although in the corner, yeah, it's is it bait? It's okay, we're safe. It's fine.
Yeah,
you got
I had
wings.
Shade Cloak, so it was going to be fine. But yeah, it was definitely not exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, whenever Nightmare King Grim lures you into the corner with the pillars, it's a bit of a tense moment because you know whatever his next attack is going to be roughly 3 times as hard to dodge. And just like with Grim, Nightmare King Grim has those balloon phases at every quarter of his health. He is still fully vulnerable, takes damage while in the balloon phase, 2 spells. You can't strike him with a nail. The Stagger, where he bursts into bats, he can take damage, but it's capped at 50 damage total. And usually runners will just use that time to gather more soul and heal if need be.
Yeah, the 50 damage total cap makes it a pretty inopportune time to try to get him. Oh, come on. I thought he was going to die there. 1 hit. All right, fine.
Always 1 hit.
I was like, it's fine. I'll just go to the corner and we'll kill him before the pillar comes.
All right, Matt, checking in on your loadless time. Are we on PB pace here?
Yeah, 2 minutes ahead.
You sound so defeated, but I told you so.
Yeah, I think I will take the bench here, just so I'm not... no, screw it. It's THK. This is how I lose the PB
spicy.
friends.
So
This is how I lose
the final piece of comedy in Pantheon 5 boss order. It's been a long run full of a lot of comedy, but the final piece of comedy is we keep Grimchild equipped. We are still a dutiful babysitter, even in the final fight of the game. Also, that's a funny little animation glitch that Matt enjoys going for.
I have to show you the helicopter knight, friends. If you hit this cutscene trigger while you're doing a cyclone slash, you become a helicopter, and it's beautiful. Had to go for it. So yes, here we go. All right, last two bosses. It's Hollow Knight and Absolute Radiance standing in for Pure Vessel. Sorry, Hollow Knight and Radiance standing in for Pure Vessel and Absolute Radiance. And it's a pretty
Honestly,
fun.
Start that petition right now. If we all write to the devs, maybe they can make it so that if you specifically fight Hollow Knight after doing a P5 boss order run, it takes you to Absrad.
That would be incredible. That would be so good. That would
also mean you're fighting
that.
Absrad with 5, basically God Home ending Absrad. 5 masks, nailed 2, it would be worse than God Home ending.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'd love to see it, but also start the petition.
I mean, hey, I've done all bindings, Absrad, it's fine.
And THK is showing off parries. Everything with a nail enjoys using it just to slow you down for their own self-interest. The Hollow Knight is really only a very scary boss in any percent when you don't have much upgrades. That's because if you die to Radiance, which we don't have to worry about because Matt's not going to do it here.
Of course not. I would
never
die
It's never happened before. But if you die to Radiance, you do have to repeat the entire fight beginning from the Hollow Knight, so Team Cherry wisely did not want to make Hollow Knight a very punishing boss in its own right, because that would be incredibly frustrating. As someone who spent a lot of time chain dying to Radiance, both casually and when learning several speedruns, it's already a pretty frustrating loop to get stuck in, so we're grateful that Hollow Knight is kind of a pushover at this much damage.
Yeah,
but sure. Radiance has quietly 4 phases. So you may argue there's some boundaries on some of the phases that are a little bit weird. There's this grounded phase, then she's going to go into a sword rain phase in just a second. This is that, where she parks in the middle and just swords drop. We actually might skip it altogether. No swords because Radiance was doing a slow attack before transitioning into the sword rain phase. So after that is a platforms phase, which is basically Radiance has the same attacks as she does in phase 1, except she teleports around these platforms instead, so it is also a little bit of platforming to watch out for. And after Matt finishes this phase, we're going to go into a climb, at which point there will be one final hit on the Radiance. So Matt's going to get one final hit in to end the run, to complete Pantheon 5 boss order, and time will be when the screen fully fades out after the cutscene.
Yep.
That is Pantheon 5 boss order.
Yep. And that will be a PB by probably 2 minutes and 15 seconds or so. Something like that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We manifested a PB tonight.
Absolutely.
And perhaps sub 3 hour RTA. I don't know. I don't have the RTA timer up. It looks like it's close.
It should be kind of close. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a delay for that, so I won't know right away, but...
Yeah, that's time.
GG.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm sitting here waiting to see where we are with the timer since I'm on this delay here, because I'm curious if it's sub 3.
Let's go!
Hell yeah!
Sub 3 RTA.
2:59:38. There we go. We went into this with a 3-hour estimate, and I didn't realize that there was like loadless timing with this. So Math told me, You know, RTA might be a little bit more than 3 hours, but we still managed it. That's awesome.
Yeah, for the record, this load list was a 2:37:12. So there's like 22 minutes of added load time, which is kind of ridiculous.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming on and running this incredible category that was nonstop action from start to finish. Just absolutely incredible run. I want to give you both a chance to both shout out not only yourselves, but anything else you'd like to, and let people know what you're up to and where they can find you.
Cool. Yeah, sure. So I'll go ahead and say, first off, I want to shout out the Hollow Knight meme run community. It is always a fantastic time. We have runs like this. This, I think, is one of our more ridiculous runs, and I absolutely love it, but there's plenty more. You can check out speedrun.com/HKmemes if you want to see some of the selection that we have over there. There's also a lovely spreadsheet, which was originally created by Quacksilver here on the comm with me. But yeah, you can always check out my my Twitch channel or my YouTube if you're interested. I'm Cthulhu in both places. And yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to showcase this run. I think it's a fantastic run, and it's always fun to let more people see it.
Yeah, and I am Quacksilver Plays over on Twitch. I am also going to be running different indie Metroidvania at AGDQ in a little bit less than 2 weeks. Haiku the Robot, I'm very excited for that. And please play Hollow Knight. It's such a good game. And also seriously follow Math at his various locations. He puts in so much work to Hollow Knight and a huge variety of other games, other memes, constantly pushing boundaries. He beat Path of Pain with a Guitar Hero controller. But yeah, and thank you so much, Nukes and GDQ, for having us on.
I didn't know about the Guitar Hero controller. That's really cool.
Yeah, I've actually done 112 with the Guitar Hero controller. It's
wow.
Sort of dumb, yeah.
See, he won't brag about it, but if you get him started...
That's so cool. What? Yeah, please go give both of these wonderful folk a follow. They both deserve your support. Also, yeah, check out AGDQ coming up starting this weekend, not just a few days away. Check out Quacksilver's run and all the other great runs going on. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to press the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, go to twitch.tv/GamesDoneQuick if you're interested in looking at our live content starting weeknights at 7 p.m. Eastern and weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern. Chat, we're gonna take a quick little break here, but make sure to stay tuned because after the break, we have speedruns from the crypt.